The echo principle in the near future, New York is divided into two realities. One seen by ordinary people, the other by the chosen few who can hear the echoes of future events. The main character, a young journalist named Mia, accidentally discovers this gift and becomes a key figure in the struggle between two secret organizations. One wants to use her abilities to prevent disasters, the other to manipulate and gain power. As she delves deeper into the mysteries of the city, Mia faces a moral choice: to change the course of history to save millions, or to preserve the free will of every individual. The hum beneath the city, the deadline for the Transit Authority piece, was looming, a red flag flapping urgently in Mia Chen's mental space. At her desk in the Ethelberg Chronicle offices, surrounded by the organized chaos of the newsroom, the rhythmic tapping of keyboards, the low murmur of voices, the insistent ping of incoming alerts, Mia felt a familiar kind of focus settle over her. She was grounded here, anchored by facts, quotes, and the satisfying click of story elements locking into place. Her screen glowed, reflecting in her sharp, observant brown eyes, currently narrowed in concentration as she parsed through bureaucratic jargon about the proposed Grand Nexus expansion. The Chronicle occupied the upper floors of a renovated Art Deco building, a space that somehow managed to feel both historical and plugged into the city's hyperconnected pulse. Mia liked the contrast. It mirrored Ethelberg itself, a sprawling canvas where centuries-old architecture rubbed shoulders with the shimmering, impossible heights of vertical farms and the sleek lines of elevated transit conduits. She was just drafting a particularly dry paragraph when it happened. It wasn't a sound she heard with her ears, not really. It was more like a resonance deep within her bones, a low, persistent hum asterisk. It started faintly, a barely perceptible vibration under the everyday din, but it grew rapidly, blooming into an oppressive wave of dread that washed over her without warning. Her fingers froze mid-sentence on the keyboard. The air in the bustling newsroom seemed to thicken, taking on a wrongness she couldn't articulate. It felt like the moment before impact, the sickening lurch just before a train derails, condensed into a pure, visceral sensation of impending disaster. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She gripped the edge of her desk, knuckles white. The hum intensified, vibrating in her teeth, resonating in her chest. Panic, hot and sharp, pricked at the edges of her composure. She squeezed her eyes shut for a second, trying to breathe through it, trying to understand where this overwhelming sense of terror was coming from. It wasn't tied to her work. The Transit Authority was dull, not terrifying. When she opened her eyes, the feeling receded, pulling back like a retreating tide, leaving behind a chilling, clammy residue. The hum faded to silence. The newsroom sounds rushed back in Chloe Davis laughing across the aisle at something on her screen, the distant wail of a siren, the whir of the ancient coffee machine. Everything was normal. Utterly, terrifyingly normal. "Rough day, Chen?" Chloe asked, leaning back in her chair and stretching. "You look like you just saw a ghost." Mia forced a shaky laugh. "Just battling the passive voice," she mumbled, turning back to her screen, though her fingers still trembled slightly. She rubbed her temples, trying to dismiss the experience. Stress, that's all it was. Too many late nights, too much caffeine, the pressure of deadlines. The city was a symphony of low frequencies, electromagnetic noise. Maybe she was just picking up on some weird interference. It was unsettling, yes, but certainly not that. She spent the next hour trying to regain her focus, but the unsettling sensation lingered in her periphery, a phantom echo of the fear. She kept glancing around, half expecting something, asterisk anything, to explain the sudden lurch into dread. Nothing did. Just the predictable rhythm of the newsroom, the comforting, mundane reality she knew. By late afternoon, the light outside the Chronicle's windows had begun to soften, casting long shadows across the street below. Mia saved her draft, the transit piece feeling insurmountable now, her concentration frayed. She needed air, space away from the humming computers, and the memory of that strange, internal vibration. Stepping out onto the busy Ethelberg sidewalk was like plunging into a different kind of current. The street teemed with people, a flowing river of commuters heading home, shoppers laden with bags, delivery drones buzzing overhead like oversized metallic insects. The air was thick with the exhaust tang of ground cars, the smell of street food vendors, the cacophony of a city in perpetual motion. The sheer density of life, of trajectories crossing and diverging, felt overwhelming. She walked briskly, heading vaguely towards the direction of her Brooklyn walk-up, trying to shake off the lingering weirdness from the office. The unsettling feeling hadn't completely vanished. It was a dull ache behind her eyes now, a faint, almost imperceptible unease thrumming just beneath the surface of her consciousness. It was like the city itself was vibrating on a frequency she wasn't supposed to perceive. She reached a crowded intersection, waiting for the pedestrian signal to change. Beside her, a woman was scrolling through her datapad, oblivious to the flow of traffic. The light changed, and the woman stepped off the curb, her eyes still glued to her screen. And then it hit Mia again. Not the full-blown dread this time, but a sharp, sickening jolt of recognition, a mirror of the earlier internal alarm. It flared just as a sleek, self-driving delivery van, clearly running a few seconds behind schedule and moving faster than it should, accelerated through the intersection, ignoring the changing light. Time seemed to stretch. The pedestrian, still looking down, was directly in its path. Mia's breath hitched. A scream rose in her throat, unspoken. In that elongated instant, it felt like the dreadful hum from the office had been a warning, a terrible premonition of this very moment. At the very last second, the delivery van's automated collision avoidance system shrieked to life. Brakes locked with a deafening screech, and the van swerved violently, tires smoking, missing the pedestrian by a hair's breadth. The woman finally looked up, startled, dropping her datapad. It clattered on the pavement. She stared at the van, then back at the street, her face pale with shock, but otherwise unharmed. A few other pedestrians reacted with gasps, some muttering about reckless automation. The driverless van corrected itself, its sensors recalibrating, and continued on its way as if nothing extraordinary had happened. The river of commuters flowed around the near collision like water around a stone. Within seconds, the street was back to its usual hum, the incident already fading into the city's relentless pace. Mia stood rooted to the spot, trembling. Her heart was pounding even harder than it had in the office. This wasn't stress. This wasn't city noise. The timing was too perfect, the sensation too specific. The deep, resonant dread she had felt earlier, it had been this asterisk. A warning, a glimpse of a future that had almost happened. She looked around at the faces of the people near her. Shock, annoyance, indifference. No one else seemed to have felt anything before the screech of tires. No one else seemed to connect the near miss to a strange, internal vibration. They had reacted to the external event, the sudden noise and drama. Mia had felt the echo before the sound, the dread before the danger manifested. A profound sense of disorientation washed over her. What was happening? Was she sick? Was she losing her mind? Or had she somehow, for a terrifying few seconds, seen something no one else could? The familiar, solid reality of Ethelberg suddenly felt thin, permeable, as if there were hidden layers vibrating just out of sight. Still unnerved, Mia finally made it back to her walk-up apartment in Brooklyn. It was a modest space, cluttered with the artifacts of her life, towering stacks of books, tangled charging cables, research notes tacked to a corkboard, a slightly outdated holoprojector. It was her sanctuary, usually a place of comfort and familiarity. Tonight, it felt less so. She locked the door behind her, leaning against it for a moment, trying to calm her racing heart. The memory of the screeching tires and the pale face of the pedestrian was seared into her mind, inextricably linked with that awful internal dread. She couldn't shake it off. It wasn't just a strange coincidence. It felt deliberate, connected. Her journalistic instincts, honed by years of chasing down leads and piecing together disparate facts, kicked in despite her fear. She needed answers. She needed to understand what had happened. Shedding her jacket, she went straight to her desk, ignoring the dinner she should have been making. She fired up her datapad, the screen illuminating the dim room. What did you even search for when you thought you'd experienced a premonition linked to a city street? She started broad, typing in terms like strange city sounds, unusual urban vibrations, feeling of dread in public places. The results were predictable. pages upon pages of forums dedicated to conspiracy theories, government mind control experiments, alien transmissions, ley lines resonating with mystic energy. There were also more clinical explanations: infrasound, low-frequency noise below human hearing, urban stress syndrome, sensory processing disorders, anxiety attacks. Mia scrolled through them, feeling a growing frustration. None of it felt right. The dread hadn't felt like her anxiety. It had felt external, a signal. And the hum wasn't just a sound, it was a physical sensation, a vibration tied to something that then almost happened. She tried more specific searches: premonitions tied to places, urban precognition, feeling future event city. This yielded even less, mostly obscure philosophical texts, more fringe theories, or studies on déjà vu that didn't capture the visceral, specific nature of her experience. She opened a blank document, her fingers hovering over the keys. She began typing, a stream of consciousness recounting everything: the sudden hum, the overwhelming dread in the office, the persistent unease, the near-miss accident, the chilling connection she felt. She wrote down the exact time she first felt it, the street corner where the van swerved. As she wrote, she tried to impose order on the chaos, to look for patterns, for logical explanations. But none presented themselves. She jotted down questions: what was the hum? Why did I feel it? Why there? Why then? Was it connected to the street? Why didn't anyone else react like I did? The words stared back at her, stark and unbelievable. If anyone else read this, they'd think she was losing her grip. And maybe she was. She leaned back in her chair, running a hand through her dark hair, leaving it slightly rumpled. The frustrating lack of answers was almost worse than the experience itself. It left her adrift, with no framework to understand what had happened. Was it a one-off glitch? A momentary hallucination brought on by fatigue? Just as she was about to close the document, ready to try and force the entire bizarre episode out of her mind, she felt it again. Faintly, barely perceptible. The low, resonant hum. It wasn't as strong as before, not accompanied by the crushing wave of dread, but it was undeniably there, a subtle vibration beneath the familiar sounds of her quiet apartment, a whisper just at the edge of hearing, just at the edge of sensation. It felt like a confirmation, a quiet insistence that what she had experienced wasn't a delusion. Frustration gave way to a cold, sharp edge of determination. The hum wasn't just a sound. It was a siren song the digital world couldn't translate. Every online search, every logical query had led to dead ends, static in the face of something vibrant and real. If she wanted answers, Mia Chen wouldn't find them staring at a screen. The truth wasn't buried in databases. It pulsed in the very concrete and steel of the city she called home. She had to go back. It wasn't just about revisiting a street corner. It was about stepping off the familiar map, trusting an instinct that felt both terrifying and undeniable. The hum was more than just noise. It was a call to look past the surface, to listen to the layers of the city itself. As the night drew in, promising only deeper unknowns, Mia knew her investigation was shifting from a professional puzzle to something far more personal and perilous. The city was waiting, and it wouldn't whisper its secrets easily. Whispers in the grand nexus ignoring the digital dead ends and the city's encroaching night, Mia Chen had walked away from her screen, pulled back to the very corner where the hum's silent scream had manifested as screeching tires. The familiar flow of evening commuters seemed distant, her senses now hyper-alert, straining past the usual urban symphony. Standing where she'd felt the premonitory dread climax, she focused, not just listening for the hum, but searching for the echoes it had left behind, traces of a future she'd glimpsed and averted. The air at the intersection felt different now, thicker, vibrating with a subtle tension that the passing crowds seemed utterly oblivious to. Ethelberg was a city of constant noise, the distant glide of maglev trains, the soft whir of automated vehicles, the murmur of countless conversations filtering from open windows or passing pedestrians. But this new sensation was internal again, like the hum, yet more specific, anchored to this patch of pavement. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to recall the exact texture of the fear, the precise angle of the near miss. When she opened them, the edges of her vision seemed to waver. It wasn't the heat haze of a summer day, the air was cool, but more like looking through flawed glass, a subtle ripple in reality. Then she heard it faint, fragmented, like whispers carried on a non-existent wind. Not coherent words, but shards of sound, a sharp intake of breath, the scrape of shoe leather, a metallic screech that wasn't a vehicle braking now, but something older, fainter. It was the echo, undeniably. She took a tentative step back, then another, testing the boundaries. The distortions lessened slightly as she moved away from the specific spot, strengthening as she returned. This wasn't random. It was localized, tied to this single corner. A specific nexus point. The memory of the almost accident flooded back, clearer now, tinged with the phantom terror she'd felt before the van even appeared. It wasn't just a feeling anymore, it was a residue, clinging to the fabric of reality here. Was this what the hum was? A precursor to these echoes? A signal alerting those sensitive enough to listen? Sensitive enough, or perhaps cursed enough. She felt a prickle of fear, yes, but beneath it, the familiar burning coal of journalistic curiosity. This was real. Tangible, in a way that online conspiracies never could be. It validated her terrifying experience from days ago. She spent another hour there, a strange figure amidst the indifferent flow of the city, observing the street corner as if it were a volatile archaeological dig. The echoes didn't resolve into clear visions or sounds, remaining fragmented whispers and visual shimmers, but their presence was undeniable, consistent. They hummed with a history that hadn't fully happened, or perhaps a future that had been narrowly avoided. The temporal resonance, as she was beginning to think of it, was strongest right here. It was unsettling, isolating. Who could she possibly tell about this? But it also solidified her purpose. She wasn't stressed, she wasn't sick. She was experiencing something real, something hidden beneath the city's polished surface. She had to understand it. Days later, the hum returned, but differently this time. Not a low dread, but a building pressure behind her eyes, a static that seemed to precede an incoming signal. She was underground, deep within the sprawling, multi-leveled heart of Ethelberg, the Grand Nexus. Her assignment was a puff piece for the Chronicle's City section, a feature on the new automated baggage handling system being piloted in one of the Nexus's lower levels. It was the kind of mundane reporting that paid the bills, a stark contrast to the terrifying mystery now consuming her thoughts. But the Nexus itself was anything but mundane. A cathedral of glass, steel, and light, it funneled hundreds of thousands of commuters, tourists, and city workers through its arteries every hour. Vertical farms climbed illuminated shafts, transit tubes crisscrossed overhead, and the air thrummed with the kinetic energy of constant movement and digital connectivity. The density of life, of trajectories, was overwhelming even on a normal day. Today, with the building static in her head, it was unbearable. As she waited for her contact from the transit authority, standing near a massive interactive directory screen displaying endless arrival and departure times, the hum intensified, rising in pitch, becoming a whine. Then the echoes hit. They didn't arrive as whispers this time, but as a tsunami of sensory input. Sound crashed over her, not the ambient noise of the Nexus, but something else entirely. Screams. Thousands of them, raw, terrified, overlapping. The tearing shriek of twisting metal. The roar of uncontrolled fire. The sickening sound of collapsing structures, concrete groaning and shattering. The frantic rhythm of stampeding feet. Visually, the vibrant digital displays flickered, momentarily replaced by ghostly, superimposed images. Dust clouds billowing through concourses, warped girders hanging precariously, flashes of emergency lights. The faces of commuters around her seemed to blur, overlaid with spectral visages contorted in panic. The fear wasn't just an external sound, it was a physical invasion. Her own heart hammered against her ribs, mirroring the phantom panic surrounding her. Nausea coiled in her gut. The air felt thin, choked with phantom smoke. She stumbled back, clutching her head, gasping for breath in the illusion of collapsing air. It was too much. The street corner had been a single note. This was an entire, horrifying symphony. Multiple futures, converging, screaming their potential realities into this single, chaotic point. The sheer volume of the temporal resonance here was shattering. She heard a distant shout that might have been real or another echo. A security officer? A concerned commuter? She couldn't focus. All she could register was the overwhelming need to escape the deluge. Abandoning her assignment, abandoning any semblance of journalistic calm, she pushed blindly through the throng, weaving past confused or annoyed travelers, needing only to get out, away from the screaming, the collapsing, the terrifying cacophony that only she seemed to hear. She didn't stop until she was back on street level, the crisp evening air a shock against her burning lungs. Even there, the echoes lingered at the edges of her hearing, fading slowly like the last vibrations of a struck bell. She leaned against the cold stone of an adjacent building, trembling, trying to regain control of her breathing, to make the solid, present-day city around her feel real again. People glanced at her, a young woman, visibly distressed, perhaps mistaken for ill or drunk. Their normal, oblivious faces were a stark counterpoint to the horror she had just experienced. The isolation was profound. Back in the familiar clutter of her Brooklyn walk-up apartment, the tremors finally began to subside, but the memory of the Grand Nexus deluge was seared into her mind. She sat hunched on her sofa, laptop open but untouched, replaying the terrifying cascade of sounds and images. It wasn't just a premonition of one event. It felt like a nexus of many potential catastrophes, a place where the threads of the future frayed and tangled violently. She felt utterly alone. Who could she possibly explain this to? Her editor, her friends? They would think she was cracking under pressure, seeing things, hearing things. The very real panic she had felt, the physical symptoms, they were undeniable to her, but invisible to everyone else. Her laptop chimed, a notification from an encrypted messaging service she used occasionally for sensitive sources. Curiosity, a reflex ingrained by years of chasing stories, nudged through the lingering fear. She opened the message. It was anonymous. No sender name, just a string of numbers and letters. The text was brief, direct, Nexus experience noted. Your sensitivity to temporal resonance is significant. You are not alone. More information available. A link followed, masked and complex, pointing to a hidden corner of the deep web. Mia stared at the screen, her heart rate spiking again, but this time not from fear, but from shock and a surge of adrenaline. Someone had seen her reaction. And they knew, or at least recognized, what was happening to her. Temporal resonance. That was the term she had instinctively landed on, standing back at the street corner days ago. This wasn't a random message. It was targeted, connected directly to her public breakdown at the Grand Nexus. The isolation she had felt moments ago was suddenly challenged by this cryptic acknowledgement. It could be a trap, a hoax designed to prey on someone experiencing something strange. Every journalistic instinct screamed caution. But another part of her, the part that had been terrified and alone in the Nexus, recognized the undeniable connection. Pushing aside the fear of the unknown sender, she clicked on the link, copying the destination before letting it resolve in a sandboxed browser. The link led to a static page with another cryptic message. If you seek understanding, search for Elias Thorne, Ethelberg Historical Society. Elias Thorne, a name, a lead. Instead of immediately trying to contact this Thorne, Mia's journalistic training took over. She opened a different, secure browser and began researching. Elias Thorne, Ethelberg Historical Society. He existed. An actual historian, specializing in urban planning and obscure city infrastructure. Published papers, professional profiles. Nothing immediately screamed, secret keeper of future echoes. Next, she shifted her focus to the Grand Nexus incident. She started scouring news archives, local city feeds, social media chatter, official transit authority reports for the date and time she was there. She looked for anything unusual, anything that might correlate with the devastation she had witnessed. What she found was fragmented, disparate, and frustratingly minor compared to the scale of her experience, yet undeniably their asterisk. There were reports of unusual delays on several transit lines converging at the Nexus. A brief, unexplained evacuation of a single platform due to a technical anomaly. A mention on a public safety log of an unusual spike in emergency calls reporting panic attacks or sudden illness within the Nexus around that time. A social media post complaining about weird flickering lights and a bad feeling in the concourse. A local blog noting that security seemed especially jumpy. None of it amounted to a catastrophic event. No collapses, no fires, no mass casualties reported. And yet, these small, seemingly unrelated disruptions clustered around the time of her echo deluge. They were like faint echoes of the echoes she had experienced, small ripples in the physical world caused by the immense temporal disturbance she had perceived. It wasn't proof that the nexus had asterisk collapsed, but it was concrete evidence that something unusual, something beyond mere coincidence, had happened during that specific window, centered on that location. The minor disruptions were real. Her overwhelming, terrifying sensory experience was real. The anonymous message referencing her reaction and temporal resonance was real. Sitting there in her quiet apartment, the city lights of Ethelberg twinkling through her window, Mia felt the pieces click into place with a chilling finality. The hum wasn't just a personal oddity. The echoes weren't hallucinations. They were glimpses of potential futures, tied to specific locations, and powerful enough to cause tangible, albeit small, effects in the present reality. The journalist in Mia, the one who chased truth regardless of the risk, knew there was no real choice at all. Denial was no longer an option. The echoes were too loud, too persistent. Her fingers hovered over a reply, confirming her intent to follow the cryptic instructions linked to the name Elias Thorne, a name that felt suddenly charged with the weight of the unknown. She would step off the path of normal reality and venture into the terrifying, fascinating mystery that had begun to unravel around her. Days after that first chilling near miss and culminating in the chaos of the Grand Nexus. The city lights of Ethelberg twinkled through her window, no longer just a backdrop, but a vast network shimmering with unseen connections, perhaps even humming with those temporal resonances Elias Thorne hinted at. Following the breadcrumb trail wouldn't be easy or safe. It meant venturing into the city's hidden corners, guided by a stranger who claimed to hold the key to understanding everything she'd experienced. It meant embracing the possibility of a world running parallel to her own, a world that might be waiting just around the next darkened street corner, a world she was now committed to finding. An invitation to the other city with the city's lights mirroring the anxious tremor in her hands, Mia had sent the reply, accepting the anonymous message's terms. Now, hours later, the breadcrumb trail led her not to a public landmark, but to a building that seemed deliberately muted, nestled away in a quieter district. The air here felt different, less frenetic than the Grand Nexus, yet charged with a subtle anticipation. Drawing a deep breath, she pushed open the unassuming door, stepping out of the ordinary flow of Ethelberg life and into the possibility of the other city she'd only glimpsed in terrifying echoes, hoping Elias Thorne held the key. The interior was blessedly quiet after the drone of Ethelberg's perpetual motion. High ceilings and tall, mullioned windows hinted at a structure with considerable age, tucked away like a secret despite its size. It wasn't a commercial establishment, nor did it look like a standard residential building. A small plaque beside the door had simply read Ethelberg Archives and Reference, confirming the Historical Society link from her hurried online search, but the lobby felt more like a private club or a very exclusive, very dusty museum. The air smelled faintly of old paper, beeswax, and something metallic and sharp, like ozone just before a storm. Mia checked her watch. It was precisely the time specified in the message. She stood just inside the door, letting her eyes adjust to the dim light filtering through the high windows. Her journalistic instincts screamed caution. Anonymous messages were usually a sign of trouble, not revelation. Yet, the message had referenced her nexus experience and sensitivity to temporal resonance, terms that chillingly validated what she'd felt but couldn't explain. Only someone who understood would use those words. The desperate need for answers warred with a prickle of fear that crawled up her spine. A soft shuffling sound drew her attention. A figure emerged from behind a towering shelf filled with ancient-looking ledgers. He was an older man, perhaps in his late 60s or early 70s, with a kind face etched with fine lines that spoke of years spent poring over history, and perhaps other things. His hair was thinning and gray, swept back from a high forehead. He wore simple, comfortable clothes, a tweed jacket over a knitted vest that seemed perfectly in keeping with the quiet, scholarly atmosphere. But it was his eyes that held her. They were a pale, intelligent blue, and when they met hers, there was an immediate recognition, a profound sense of asterisk seeing that went beyond mere observation. He didn't smile widely, just a gentle turn of his lips. "Mia Chen," he said, his voice a low, warm rumble that seemed to vibrate not just in the air, but subtly inside her chest. It was a strange feeling, not unpleasant, but resonant. It felt similar to the asterisk start of the hum, but controlled, gentle. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Mr. Thorne," she managed, her voice tighter than she intended. He nodded slowly. "Elias Thorne, please come in properly." "The door likes to sigh closed." He gestured further into the room, towards a large, worn table set with 2 chairs. "I imagine you have a great many questions." Mia closed the door behind her, the soft click echoing in the quiet space. She approached the table cautiously, her bag clutched tightly. She scanned the room instinctively, looking for signs of surveillance, hidden exits, anything unusual. Apart from the overwhelming presence of historical documents and the faint metallic tang in the air, it seemed harmless. "You sent the message," she stated, needing confirmation aloud. Elias settled into one of the chairs, inviting her to the other with a gesture. "I did. I apologize for the clandestine nature of the contact, but for reasons I will explain, it was necessary. The events at the Grand Nexus. They drew my attention." Mia sat down, but remained perched on the edge of the seat, ready to bolt. "How did you know about the Nexus? And how did you know it affected asterisk me?" Elias folded his hands on the tabletop. "We perceive things others do not, Miss Chen, much like you have recently begun to. What you experienced is not stress or infrasound or a psychological break, though I understand why you might have initially sought those explanations." He paused, letting his words sink in. Mia felt a shiver run down her spine. He was saying exactly what she had tried to deny, what her research couldn't explain, but her instincts affirmed. "What was asterisk it?" she asked, leaning forward despite herself. "It was an echo," Elias said simply. "A fragment of a potential future event, resonating back through the city's temporal field. Ethelberg, with its layered history and frantic, hyperconnected present, is particularly rich in these resonances. They linger, sometimes coalescing into something perceivable. What you felt, the hum, the dread, the sensory overload at the nexus, that is how echoes manifest for those who can perceive them. Echoes, temporal resonance. It sounded like something out of a science fiction novel, not something happening to her in her own city. Yet his words fit terrifyingly well with the terrifying reality of the past few days. "You're saying I can hear the future?" Mia asked, the concept feeling too large, too impossible. Elias shook his head slightly. "Not hear it like listening to a broadcast. It's more akin to feeling the ghost of potential. Echoes are not fixed destinies, but probabilities, possibilities. Sometimes faint, sometimes loud, depending on the energy of the potential event and your own sensitivity. You, Miss Chen, possess a remarkable sensitivity, what we call an echo hearer." Mia stared at him, her mind racing. Echo hearer, the hum wasn't madness, it was a sense. The dread wasn't anxiety, it was a premonition. The chaos at the nexus wasn't a delusion, it was, what? A future disaster that didn't asterisk happen? The nexus, she pressed, needing clarity on that specific horror. It felt like a collapse, fire, screams, but nothing happened. Just delays, flickering lights. "Exactly," Elias said, a hint of sadness in his eyes. That particular echo was of a catastrophic failure, a confluence of system malfunctions and human error that would have resulted in significant loss of life. Those small disruptions you saw in the logs, they were the real-world friction, the ripples caused by the echo's presence in the field. Sometimes, the sheer weight of a strong echo subtly nudges reality, causing minor disturbances. And sometimes those who perceive the echo can act just slightly to shift the probability. Mia's breath hitched. "You mean, someone prevented asterisk it?" Elias gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Those like us, those who perceive, we don't change destiny, Miss Chen. Destiny is a rigid concept, and echoes are fluid. We simply nudge the probabilities, infinitesimally if possible, to avert the most terrible outcomes foreshadowed by the loudest, clearest echoes. We listen to the other city, the city of potential and resonance, and use that knowledge cautiously. We call ourselves the Aegis. The Aegis. Another piece clicked into place. A secret organization dedicated to, what? Preventing disasters based on future whispers? It sounded noble, but also incredibly dangerous and powerful. The Aegis, Mia repeated, testing the name. And you are part of it. I am, Elias confirmed. I specialize in the historical echoes, the deep resonances tied to ancient sites and past tragedies. But the principles are the same. We are echo hearers who have chosen to use this perception not for personal gain, but for the quiet preservation of life and stability. Mia felt a wave of dizziness. This was too much. A hidden world, people with abilities she hadn't dreamed existed, secret organizations. So, this other city you mentioned, she said, trying to process. It's not a physical place? Not in the way you understand, Elias explained patiently. It is the dimension of resonance. The collective echoes of Ethelberg's potential futures and powerful pasts superimposed upon the physical city. Most people move through it unaware, but it exists. And you, Mia, are now sensitive enough to perceive its presence. It is a profound gift, but also a profound burden. He stood up. Talking about it here is one thing. Seeing, or rather, feeling it with guidance is another. Would you be willing to see? A little more? Mia hesitated. Every instinct screamed danger, but her journalist's curiosity, honed over years of chasing stories others missed, was alight. This was the biggest story of her life, a hidden layer of reality, and she was somehow at its center. Fear, yes, but also a burning need to understand. Where? She asked, her voice steadier this time. Elias walked towards a section of the wall lined with bookshelves that looked less like archives and more like a solid barrier. He placed his hand on a specific spine of a large, leather-bound volume. There was a soft click, and a section of the wall smoothly retracted, revealing not another room full of books, but a softly lit corridor stretching into the distance. The metallic tang in the air here was stronger, and Mia felt the familiar, subtle hum pulsing beneath her skin, but it was contained, almost pleasant, not overwhelming. The Aegis Sanctum, Elias said, gesturing towards the opening. One of its many points of access beneath the city. This way. Mia swallowed hard. Stepping through that hidden doorway felt like crossing a threshold not just into a building, but into a different dimension of her life. She followed Elias into the corridor. The passage was utilitarian, unlike the old-world charm of the library entrance. Polished composite floors, walls lined with panels that hummed faintly with contained energy, and soft, indirect lighting. It wasn't sterile like the glimpses she'd had of high-tech corporate buildings, but it felt highly functional and secure. After a short walk, they emerged into a larger space. It wasn't vast, but it was clearly a hub of activity, albeit quiet activity. Around a circular table in the center, several people sat or stood, intently watching holographic displays that shimmered with complex diagrams, energy readings, and what looked disturbingly like fluctuating probability graphs. The hum here was strongest, a constant, low thrum that Mia could feel resonating deep in her bones, but it didn't bring the panic it had before. It felt observed, monitored, understood. One of the figures at the table looked up as they entered. She was a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and short, practical hair. She gave Elias a brief, acknowledging nod, her gaze lingering on Mia for a moment, assessing. She didn't speak, returning her attention to the displays. This is a monitoring station, Elias explained in a low voice, guiding Mia towards a console set slightly apart from the main table. We focus the ambient field here, mapping the stronger echoes. You can see the energy signatures. He pointed to a section of a display showing spikes and dips on a timeline. Each peak represents a potential event. The stronger the echo, the higher the peak, the more likely the event is to occur if left unchecked. He then touched a control on the console. A smaller, focused holographic projection appeared in front of Mia, shimmering with a localized energy signature. It wasn't as overwhelming as the Grand Nexus, deliberately dampened, but she could feel its presence. A knot of anxiety centered around a specific location she recognized as a busy downtown plaza. Focus on that signature, Elias instructed gently. Don't fight it. Let your perception reach towards it. Mia took a deep breath, trying to filter out the general hum of the sanctum and concentrate on the projection. She felt a subtle shift in the echo field around her, like tuning a radio to a faint frequency. The knot of anxiety solidified, accompanied by fleeting, fragmented sensations. The smell of roasting nuts, the sound of a street performer's music, a sudden, sharp crack, and then a wave of localized panic, screams cut short. It was brief, less than a second, but intensely real. She flinched back, blinking rapidly. What? What was that? A potential small-scale incident, Elias said calmly, turning off the projection. A structural failure in an elevated walkway, potentially resulting in casualties. The echo is currently quite weak, the probability low, but it's something we will continue to monitor. Mia shuddered. This wasn't theoretical anymore. She had just felt a potential disaster, a glimpse into a future that could happen. It was horrifying, but also, in a twisted way, validating. Elias turned to face her fully, his expression serious. Mia, what you experienced at the Nexus, what you just felt now is just the beginning. Your sensitivity is rare and powerful. Untrained, it will be overwhelming, even dangerous. But with guidance, you could learn to understand and control it. To perceive the other city not as a source of terror, but as a source of knowledge. He paused, his gaze steady. The Aegis exists to guide those like you, to provide training and, crucially, protection. You've drawn attention simply by experiencing the Nexus echo so strongly. There are others in Ethelberg who also perceive the echoes, but they view them differently. They see echoes not as warnings to be subtly averted, but as information to be exploited. Potential futures to be manipulated for power, control, and profit. They will seek you out now that your sensitivity is manifesting so strongly. He lowered his voice. Stepping through that door, acknowledging what you are, makes you a target. Staying silent and trying to ignore it is no longer an option. The echoes won't leave you alone, and your heightened sensitivity will inevitably be noticed by those other factions. You have a choice, Mia. You can try to navigate this alone, blind and vulnerable, or you can accept our help. We offer not just safety within the sanctum, but the opportunity to understand your ability and learn how to use it responsibly, aligned with our principles of minimal interference. He gestured around the quiet, humming control room. We offer you guidance. We offer you training. We offer you the protection of the Aegis, but it is a choice that comes with significant risk. You will be stepping fully into the other city, and there is no easy way back to the ordinary one. Mia looked from Elias to the silent figures watching the shimmering displays, then back to the hidden door they had come through. The hum of the sanctum pulsed around her, a constant reminder of the hidden reality she could now perceive. Elias' words echoed in her mind. Target, exploited, manipulation, responsibility, minimal interference. The weight of the choice pressed down on her. She was a journalist. Her job was to uncover the truth and report it. But this wasn't just a story. It was her life, inextricably bound to a world she hadn't known existed until days ago. Fear warred with the same deep-seated drive that had sent her researching in the first place, a need to understand, to know the truth, no matter how strange. Her gaze settled back on Elias Thorne, the kind eyes beneath the weary brow offering a path forward, however perilous. He understood. He could teach her. The alternative felt like drowning in unfiltered chaos. Her acceptance wasn't just a spoken word. It was a physical step across a threshold unseen by the casual eye. Behind her, the predictable hum of Ethelberg faded, no longer her primary reality. Before her lay the true other city, not merely a place, but a state of being, woven from the complex, often terrifying tapestry of past resonances and potential futures she could barely comprehend. Elias Thorne nodded, a flicker of grave understanding in his eyes. The path she had chosen promised understanding, yes, and perhaps even control, but it would demand everything she had. It was a descent into the heart of the temporal storm that had threatened to consume her, where mastering the echoes was the only way to survive, let alone thrive. The world, she knew instinctively, would never sound the same again. The ripple effect stepping across that unseen threshold into the Aegis sanctum, the quiet reality of the archives instantly dissolved, replaced by a storm of sensory input. The other city wasn't merely a concept. It was a cacophony of voices, images, and emotions echoing from futures yet to be, a roaring symphony of temporal resonance Mia had only glimpsed before. She stumbled, overwhelmed by the sudden, dizzying surge of information, but Elias Thorne was beside her instantly. His quiet strength was a much-needed anchor in the chaos, his voice cutting through the temporal hum. "That's the noise," he said gently. "Now we begin learning how to hear the music." The Aegis Sanctum was not the sterile, high-tech hub she might have expected from a secret organization. Instead, it felt lived-in, pragmatic. Within moments of her arrival, the initial sensory onslaught subsided slightly, not because it lessened, but because Elias guided her through an archway into a smaller, quieter chamber. The walls here were thicker, lined with acoustic paneling that seemed to absorb not just sound, but maybe other frequencies as well. This felt less like a command center and more like a studio, a place designed for focus. "Think of the echoes like radio waves," Elias began, his voice calm and steady. "Right now, your receiver is picking up every frequency simultaneously. It's overwhelming. Our first task is to install filters to teach you to tune in to what you need and block out the rest." He gestured to a simple chair in the center of the room. "Sit. We'll start with stillness." Mia sank into the chair, the ambient hum of the sanctum still a noticeable presence beneath the surface of her awareness. "How? How do I filter it?" she asked, her voice a little shaky. The memory of the Grand Nexus panic was still vivid. "Everyone develops their own methods," Elias explained, pulling up a chair opposite her. "Some visualize a shield, others a tuning dial. For many, an internal anchor helps a memory, a feeling, a physical sensation you can return to that grounds you in the present moment." He paused, letting that sink in. "Try focusing on your breath. Feel the air entering and leaving your lungs. That is undeniably now asterisk." Mia closed her eyes and tried. Immediately, the chaos rushed in. Voices, sharp and distressed, seemed to overlap, a child crying, an argument on a street corner, a distant shout of alarm. Fleeting images flickered behind her eyelids, a splintering piece of wood, a splash of dark liquid, a sudden burst of light. And beneath it all, the emotional resonance, fear, frustration, a dull, persistent ache. "It's too much," she whispered, a tremor in her voice. "It's everywhere." "I know," Elias said soothingly. "It was for all of us at first. Don't try to block it, just observe it like watching clouds drift by. Don't attach to any one cloud. Just breathe and feel the chair beneath you, your feet on the floor." She tried again, focusing on the solid reality of the chair, the rhythm of her breath. It was like trying to ignore 1,000 people talking at once in a small room, but slowly, painstakingly, she found tiny moments of respite. The images became less insistent, the voices a little less sharp. The sheer asterisk volume didn't decrease, but her reaction to it began to shift, from panic to a weary acceptance. Over the next few days, the training continued. Elias introduced exercises to differentiate the types of echoes. Auditory echoes are often the easiest to isolate, snippets of conversation, specific sounds of impact or collapse, he explained, projecting a faint, controlled resonance into the room using a discrete device on a table. Mia flinched as she heard the sound of screeching tires followed by a sickening crunch. "That's the sound of kinetic energy abruptly dispersing," Elias noted clinically, then cut the projection. "Visual echoes can be fragments," he continued. A glimpse of a damaged structure, a specific object falling, the expression on someone's face in a moment of crisis. Emotional resonance is the hardest to filter, but often the most informative raw fear, confusion, sometimes even triumph. Learn to categorize them. It helps build structure in the noise. Mia practiced for hours, both with Elia's guided projections and simply by sitting in various hotspot areas of the sanctum, learning to compartmentalize the influx. She discovered her own anchors, the smooth, cool stone of a small pendant she wore, the memory of her grandmother's laugh, the steady beat of her own pulse. She learned that visual echoes often appeared as translucent overlays on her normal sight, while auditory ones were internal, like whispers directly in her mind. Emotional echoes were the most pervasive, a low-level hum of the city's potential futures. Elias also spent considerable time on the ethics of Aegis. "We are not fortune tellers dictating fate," he stressed one evening, sketching diagrams on a display screen in the monitoring room, a room filled with subtle interfaces displaying shifting patterns of light and data Mia was only beginning to understand. We perceive potential futures, probabilities. Every decision, every action, creates ripples. The further out an echo is, the more diffuse and uncertain it becomes, subject to countless variables. Closer echoes, especially those tied to specific, imminent events, have a stronger resonance, but they are still probabilities, not certainties. He tapped the screen, highlighting a complex web of intersecting lines. Our purpose is simple: prevent unnecessary harm. We act only when we perceive an imminent threat to life or significant well-being, and we act subtly asterisk. Minimal intervention. The goal is to nudge the timeline, not shatter it. We preserve free will by making small changes that allow events to unfold differently, rather than imposing a fixed outcome. Mia absorbed it all, the technical details of echo perception blending with the profound moral implications. The Aegis philosophy resonated deeply with her journalistic instinct: observe, report, expose, but don't manipulate the story itself. Here, the story was the city's future, and the goal was to prevent tragedy without becoming a god. Ready for a practical application? Elias asked one afternoon, entering the training room where Mia was finally managing to hold a 10-minute focus against a projected minor echo. Mia nodded, a mix of apprehension and eagerness stirring within her. She was tired of being a passive recipient of these terrifying premonitions. She wanted to do something. They moved to the monitoring room, which Mia was starting to see not just as a collection of screens, but as a filtered window into the other city. Shifting holographic displays showed overlays on a map of Ethelberg, highlighting areas with increased temporal resonance. Different colors and intensities represented different types of echoes: green for low-level ambient noise, yellow for localized disturbances, red for potential high-impact events. We've been tracking an elevated yellow resonance signature in the Lower Haven district for the past few hours, Elias explained, pointing to a section of the map near the docks. It's coalescing around the old waterfront warehouses, specifically near the intersection of Pier Road and Gannett Street. See if you can focus on that area. Mia closed her eyes, drawing on the focus techniques Elias had taught her. She pushed aside the general hum of the city's possibilities, directing her internal receiver towards the coordinates Elias had given her. It was like trying to zoom in on a specific sound in a crowded room. Slowly, the cacophony began to resolve into something more focused. The yellow haze solidified, and she began to pick out distinct echoes. Auditory: the creak of metal under strain, the sharp snap of something giving way, the distant blare of a horn, then a muffled roar. Visual: a section of aged brick wall crumbling, a heavy object falling, sparks, dust. Emotional: a wave of surprise, then panic, then a sudden sharp pain. It's a collapse, Mia said, opening her eyes. Her hands were trembling slightly, but this time it wasn't pure terror. It was a focused dread, the kind she felt on the street before the van incident, but clearer, more detailed. Part of a building, near the corner, something heavy falls, hits the street. There are people there, she trailed off, seeing a flash of a figure crumpling. Elias nodded, studying a nearby display that showed structural integrity data feeds overlaid with traffic flow predictions for that area. The resonance indicates a high probability of a partial facade collapse on Warehouse 7B within the next hour, he confirmed. Routine structural reports flagged potential weakness, but permits for repair were delayed. There's expected to be a delivery truck making a drop-off and a small group of pedestrians using that sidewalk around. Now, he checked his wrist-mounted display. Lives are at risk, Mia stated, the journalistic urgency kicking in but layered with the chilling certainty of the echo. Precisely, Elias said, and this is precisely the kind of incident we can address with minimal intervention. A localized threat, imminent, preventable with a small nudge. What do we do? Mia asked, ready. We prevent the impact, Elias said. Not by reinforcing the wall, that's too visible, too disruptive, but by ensuring no one is there when it falls. There's a city contractor who receives automated structural alerts, but the one for Warehouse 7B seems to have been routed to a defunct email address for the past week. He looked at Mia. Your job is to generate a ripple. A small, undetectable one. They left the sanctum shortly after, emerging back into the ordinary city sunlight near the Lower Haven district. Mia still felt the faint pull of the temporal resonance, a phantom weight in the air around the old warehouses, but it was now a target, not a source of terror. They settled into a small, unremarkable cafe a block away from the targeted intersection, ordered coffee, and blended into the background. From their vantage point, Mia could see the corner of Warehouse 7B, its brick facade looking tired but stable to the casual observer. The contractor's system is set to trigger a manual inspection request if it receives a priority alert from a verified source. Elias explained quietly, sliding a sleek, nondescript datapad across the table to Mia. This datapad has a secured, untraceable uplink designed to inject a low-level, priority alert packet directly into the city's building code network. It mimics the lost structural report, but routes it to the correct contractor's current system. It's a ghost in the machine, untraceable back to us, minimal intervention. Mia looked at the datapad, then at the warehouse. The echo felt stronger now, the moment of collapse drawing nearer. She could almost feel the strain on the old bricks. Just activate the sequence, Elias prompted gently. Let the system handle the rest. Taking a deep breath, Mia tapped the screen. A single progress bar filled instantly. Sent, she confirmed, handing the datapad back. Now they waited. Mia watched the street corner, hyper-aware of every pedestrian approaching, every vehicle turning onto Pier Road. The echo in her mind was a countdown clock, the sense of impending collapse intensifying. Moments passed. A delivery truck idled at a nearby loading dock but didn't turn onto Gannett Street. A woman with a dog walked down the opposite side of Pier Road. The specific group of pedestrians Mia had seen in the echo, a man in a yellow shirt, a woman with a blue bag, didn't appear. Then, a small, municipal-looking vehicle pulled up to Warehouse 7B. Two men in safety vests got out, scanned the facade briefly, then seemed to make a quick call on a comms device. Within minutes, they were placing temporary caution tape across the sidewalk section nearest the building corner. A larger city vehicle arrived shortly after, parking strategically to block sidewalk access and reroute pedestrian traffic. The flow of people and vehicles shifted naturally, guided away from the immediate vicinity of Warehouse 7B. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to anyone not looking for it. Just a minor inconvenience, a temporary closure. Mia held her breath, watching the corner of the building. The echo was screaming now, the internal sound of tearing metal and cracking brick deafening. This was the moment, and then, nothing happened. Not nothing in reality, but nothing like the echo. The part of the wall that Mia had seen collapse remained stubbornly in place. The specific people from her vision were not there to be harmed. And the echo changed. It wasn't a sudden silence, but a gradual fading. The piercing sounds of collapse softened, distorted, then simply weren't there anymore. The visual overlay of crumbling brick flickered like a dying projection, then dissolved entirely. The emotional resonance of panic dissipated, replaced by the ordinary, low-level hum of the city's continued existence. Mia let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The world felt cleaner, lighter. You feel it? Elias asked, a small, knowing smile on his face. Mia nodded, tears pricking her eyes, not of fear, but of profound relief and something else. Exhilaration. It's gone, the echo. It's like the future I saw, just didn't happen. Exactly, Elias said, collecting their empty coffee cups. The ripple effect. A small, focused action at one point in the timeline changed the conditions just enough that the predicted outcome became one of infinite other possibilities, none of which included that specific collapse causing harm. The future wasn't fixed, Mia. It was contingent. And we helped guide that contingency. Stepping out of the cafe and back onto the busy Ethelberg Street, Mia looked towards the old warehouse, now cordoned off with bright yellow tape. It looked different, not just because of the tape, but because the oppressive weight of the echo was gone. This is what we do, Elias said, walking beside her. We listen to the music of potential, and sometimes we play a single, quiet note to change the melody just enough to avoid a discord. Walking beside Elias, the city lights seeming to pulse with her own newfound energy, Mia felt a sense of belonging she hadn't known existed. She had found her place, finally understanding the echoes not just as a mystery, but as a path she could walk. This world, once terrifyingly alien, now felt like home, and she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead with the Aegis, a confidence born from purpose blooming within her. But the city was vast, its secrets deeper than she could yet grasp. Elias had mentioned other factions, other groups who didn't see the echoes as possibilities to be gently guided, but as patterns to be understood, mastered, perhaps even bent to their will. A different resonance thrummed beneath the familiar pulse she was just learning to read, a powerful, complex frequency she didn't yet understand, a presence waiting just beyond the light. Her journey had just begun, and the path ahead held not only the known dangers Elias warned of, but the unseen forces that moved with their own distinct rhythm. A different resonance, the quiet exhilaration Mia had felt walking beside Elias, the sense of finally understanding the echoes as a path she could walk, settled over her in the days that followed. But just as she began to feel truly anchored in this new world with Aegis, the different resonance Elias had warned of, a powerful frequency distinct from the temporal echoes, made its presence undeniably known. It arrived not as a ripple of possibility, but with deliberate purpose, waiting on her desk at the Chronicle offices in the form of a heavy, sealed package. Mia stared at it, her fingers hovering just above the pristine, dark gray box. It felt impossibly solid, devoid of any shipping labels or markings beyond her name printed in elegant, stark white font directly onto the surface. It hadn't been there when she'd stepped out to grab coffee 10 minutes ago. No messenger was milling about the newsroom floor, no delivery log indicated its arrival. It had simply appeared. Elias' words echoed in her mind. There are others, factions who see the echoes not as warnings to avert disaster, but as data streams to be analyzed, controlled, exploited. They are powerful, resourceful, and view sensitivity like yours as a resource to be acquired. Their resonance is different, colder, more calculating. Hesitation prickled at her skin. Aegis had given her a purpose, a shield, a nascent understanding of the chaos she'd been experiencing. They felt right. Subtlety, preservation of free will, preventing disaster with the lightest touch. But her journalistic instincts, honed over years of digging for hidden truths, screamed at her. This package asterisk was a hidden truth, delivered with undeniable fanfare. What was in it, who sent it, and how had they found her and placed this here undetected? She cast a quick glance around the bustling newsroom. Nobody seemed to have noticed the anomaly on her desk. Her colleagues were hunched over keyboards, barking into phones, chasing down leads. The air was thick with the familiar scent of stale coffee, cheap ink, and frantic energy. This package felt alien to it all. With a deep breath, she carefully lifted the box. It was heavier than it looked, dense with unknown contents. There was no obvious way to open it, no seams, no flap. As her thumb brushed against the white font of her name, a soft click echoed from within, and a narrow panel slid open on the top surface. Inside, nestled in dark foam, was a single, sleek data crystal and a small, perfectly folded card. The crystal was faceted, catching the office light like a dark jewel. The card, made of a material that felt smoother than paper, bore only a simple emblem, a stylized hourglass formed from two intertwined C shapes. The Chronos Collective. The name Elias had mentioned only briefly, usually with a note of caution. Picking up the data crystal, Mia noticed a faint, rhythmic pulse of light emanating from its core, a different kind of resonance, just as Elias had described. Not the chaotic, emotional waves of potential futures, but something ordered, technological. She placed it into the secure, encrypted reader Aegis had given her, bypassing her work computer. The data loaded instantly. It wasn't a virus or a threat. It was a presentation. Visuals, graphs, audio snippets. It outlined in precise, chilling detail Mia's own recent experiences. The hum, the Grand Nexus incident, even her presence at the Lower Haven warehouse district during the averted collapse. There were temporal energy readings, correlation analyses, efficiency metrics comparing different intervention methods. And then, a formal invitation. Subject, acknowledging your unique sensitivity and invitation to Mia Chen asterisk from the Chronos Collective. Ms. Chen, we have observed your recent interactions with ambient temporal resonance. Your unique capacity for perception is remarkable and warrants immediate discussion regarding its potential and inherent dangers. The current temporal landscape of Ethelberg is increasingly volatile, presenting both unprecedented challenges and unparalleled opportunities for guiding humanity towards a stable, prosperous future. Your current affiliation, while well-intentioned, employs methods we deem profoundly inefficient and ultimately incapable of navigating the true complexities of the echo field. Preserving free will in the face of temporal entropy is a romantic fallacy. True progress requires foresight and decisive action. The Chronos Collective possesses the resources, technology, and vision necessary to understand, analyze, and, where necessary, influence the temporal flow with precision and efficacy. We invite you to meet with our director, Silas Vane, to discuss a path forward that leverages your abilities for maximum impact. A secure transport will be available at 17:00 hours at the designated location, encrypted coordinates. Failure to accept this invitation will, regrettably, necessitate alternative measures to ensure your potential does not fall into unproductive hands. The coordinates were real, mapped to a discrete pickup zone several blocks away. The tone was polite, almost deferential, yet the underlying threat was clear. Failure to accept. Necessitate alternative measures. They weren't asking. They were stating, and they knew everything asterisk. A cold knot formed in Mia's stomach. This was the different resonance, not chaotic potential, but calculated intent. Elias had shown her a world of subtle nudges and averting disaster by preserving choice. Chronos spoke of guiding, influencing, leveraging, controlling. But the presentation had also shown data Aegis hadn't revealed, detailed temporal energy signatures, complex visualizations that made Aegis's holographic display look simplistic. Her journalistic curiosity gnawed at her. How did they know so much? What was this, advanced TRT? And who was Silas Vane, this man who spoke of free will as a romantic fallacy? Despite the warning signs blinking frantically in her mind, the impulse to investigate, to see the other side of this hidden world, was overwhelming. She had committed to understanding. How could she understand the whole picture if she only saw the Aegis perspective? This wasn't a choice for Chronos, not yet. It was a choice to gather information, to see her opponent up close, as any good journalist would. She checked the time. 16:15. Just enough time to pack away her work, send a non-committal message to Elias, investigating a new angle, might be offline for a bit, and head to the pickup location. The knot remained, but it was joined by a sharpening sense of focus. She was stepping into the lion's den, but she would go in with her eyes open. The encrypted coordinates led Mia to a sleek, black town car idling beside a nondescript park. No company logos, no driver visible through the tinted windows until she approached. The rear door swung open silently as she got close. A young woman with an unnervingly serene expression sat inside, gesturing for Mia to enter. "Ms. Chen," the woman said softly as Mia slid onto the plush leather seat. "Welcome. Mr. Vane is looking forward to meeting you." The car pulled away smoothly, merging into the dense Ethelberg traffic. Mia watched the city blur past, the familiar mix of old brownstones and glittering vertical farms, the subtle shimmer of the ambient echo field that she was now learning to perceive. But as they drove, she noticed something else. The driver wasn't navigating conventionally. The car seemed to anticipate traffic flows, making turns and lane changes with impossible precision, as if following an unseen, optimized route. Was this a subtle application of TRT? Predicting traffic several minutes ahead, they drove towards the central spires, the gleaming towers that pierced the skyline. The car finally stopped in front of one of the newest, tallest structures, a monolith of polished obsidian and reflective glass that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. The Chronos Institute. The lobby was a study in minimalist opulence. Soaring ceilings, polished floors that felt like walking on water, and a complete absence of visible security personnel or receptionists. Instead, strategically placed sensor nodes hummed faintly, scanning. Mia felt a sense of being intensely observed, weighed, measured. It was intimidating, a deliberate display of power and control. No worn library or hidden subway passage here. This was built to impress, to project dominance. A section of the wall shimmered and slid open, revealing a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity, lined with softly glowing panels that shifted colors imperceptibly. The serene woman motioned for Mia to follow. They walked in silence, the air temperature precisely controlled, the only sound the soft glide of their shoes on the floor. Mia felt a growing unease, a sense of being completely outside her element. This wasn't just another organization. It was an entirely different scale of operation, a different asterisk philosophy made manifest in glass and steel. They stopped before a large, opaque door that turned transparent as they approached, revealing a spacious room beyond. It was less an office, more a command center filtered through an art gallery. Walls were dominated by massive, dynamic displays showing complex shifting visualizations, not just temporal echoes as Mia understood them, but intricate network graphs, probability flowcharts, and what looked like predictive modeling of city-wide systems. Energy grids, transit, even social patterns. This was the advanced temporal resonance technology, and it was breathtakingly complex. Seated at a large, curved console in the center of the room was a man who could only be Silas Vane. He rose as Mia entered, turning with a practiced ease that exuded confidence. He was lean, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that seemed to flow around him, and had a face that was handsome in a sharp, intelligent way, framed by carefully styled silvering hair. His eyes, a piercing blue, held a depth that spoke of immense intellect and perhaps cold calculation. "Miss Chen," Vane said, his voice smooth and resonant, carrying just the right mix of warmth and authority. He extended a hand. "Silas Vane, thank you for accepting my invitation. Please come in." Mia shook his hand. His grip was firm, his skin cool. "Mr. Vane, this is quite a setup." Vane smiled, a genuine, disarming expression that somehow felt more unsettling than any frown. "We believe in having the right tools for the job, Ms. Chen, and understanding the temporal flow is the most important job facing humanity today." He gestured towards the shifting displays. "What you perceive, Chen, what the Aegis calls echoes, we see as a vast, complex data network. The universe doesn't deal in vague hums and feelings. It deals in patterns, probabilities, causal chains. Our technology helps us quantify that." He led her towards the console, the displays swirling around them. One screen showed a cascade of data points converging on a specific date and time, a probability percentage rising steadily. "A Class 3 environmental displacement event," Vane explained casually. "Projected to occur within the next 72 hours. Aegis would perceive this as, what? A wave of dread, a visual of a flash flood, and then they would attempt some small, localized nudge, perhaps reporting a blocked drain, hoping it makes a difference." He chuckled softly, a sound devoid of humor. "Inefficient, amateurish." Mia bristled slightly. "They averted a building collapse just days ago." "A small incident," Vane dismissed with a wave of his hand. "A predictable structural failure. Easily modeled, easily intervened upon with minimal effort, yes. But what of truly significant events? Global financial crashes, viral outbreaks, geopolitical conflicts? Do you think a priority alert about a loose bolt will change the course of history?" He turned to face her fully, his blue eyes holding hers. "Mia, the Aegis operate on a fundamental misunderstanding of reality. They believe in free will as an ultimate good, a sacred cow. But free will, when extrapolated across billions of individuals, creates chaos. It is the source of the most destructive temporal fluctuations. The echoes are the asterisk sound of that chaos manifesting as potential futures." He walked towards a different display, which showed intricate branching timelines, many terminating abruptly or collapsing into tangled knots. "Look at this. Every echo represents a potential path. Without intervention, most lead to suboptimal, often disastrous outcomes. The Aegis believes their duty is simply to perceive these paths and avoid the worst ones passively, hoping humanity figures it out. We believe our duty is to choose asterisk the optimal path and guide humanity towards it actively asterisk. Guide or control? Mia asked, her voice steady despite the tremor she felt inside. Vane smiled again, a wide, convincing smile. A matter of perspective. We prefer optimization. We have the ability to analyze millions of potential futures simultaneously, identify the most stable, prosperous timelines, and then use sophisticated temporal resonance technology to, shall we say, amplify the probability of that desired future, while asterisk dampening the probability of undesirable ones. He tapped a control on the console, and a localized area on one of the displays brightened, the timelines within it straightening and converging towards a positive outcome. We can make the right choices feel more intuitive, more likely. We can subtly influence decision nodes, not dictate, mind you, but suggest asterisk. Guide the flow like diverting a river. Mia thought of Elia's, carefully crafting a fake report, setting up a simple barrier. She thought of the relief and purpose she'd felt, having saved people by asterisk preserving their ability to choose a different street, a different route. Vane was talking about manipulating the river itself, not just building a small dam. That sounds like playing God, she ventured. We are simply taking responsibility, Vane countered smoothly. Humanity, left to its own devices, is too often short-sighted, fearful, driven by irrational impulses. We have the foresight to see the cliff edge. Is it not our moral obligation to steer the vehicle away, even if the passengers didn't realize the danger? He paused, letting his words hang in the air, then turned back to the main console. Kaido, he called out. A figure emerged from the shadows of the room where they had been silently observing or working on a different console. It was Kaido Tanaka. He was younger than Vane, sharp-featured with an intensity in his dark eyes that was difficult to read. He moved with a quiet efficiency, projecting an air of focused competence. "Silas," Kaido said, his voice calm and measured. "Show Ms. Chen the latest predictive model for the downtown transit grid anomaly," Vane instructed. "Explain the probabilistic shifts." Kaido nodded curtly and approached the console, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. Complex data visualizations shifted and reformed under his touch. The temporal resonance originating from the Class 4 infrastructure instability downtown shows a 68% probability of cascading failures within the next 48 hours, Kaido stated, his tone purely analytical. Aegis's methodology would likely focus on identifying the source of the instability, a failing support column, for instance, and attempting to trigger a manual repair order. Our analysis indicates this approach has only an 11% success rate for complete system stabilization, due to unforeseen variables introduced by the human element and system dependencies. He gestured to another part of the display. Our approach involves identifying critical network nodes within the echo field itself. By introducing a targeted frequency modulation at these points, he tapped a sequence of controls, and a section of the display pulsed with a controlled energy flow, we can influence the temporal probability curves. We project this modulation increases the probability of a stable outcome to 92%, effectively correcting the timeline. Mia watched, fascinated and appalled. It was science, terrifyingly advanced science, applied to the fabric of potential reality. Kaido's explanation was dense with technical jargon, but the intent was crystal clear. They weren't reacting to potential futures, they were asterisk engineering asterisk them. Kaido executed the modulation with detached precision, his focus absolute. He seemed entirely committed to Vane's vision, a perfect instrument for their calculated manipulation of time. Yet, as he stepped back, Mia caught a flicker in his eyes, a fleeting expression that seemed resigned. Or perhaps just weary of the sheer complexity. It was gone before she could be sure. Vane smiled, reclaiming Mia's attention. "As you can see, Ms. Chen, we don't simply asterisk hear the echoes, we asterisk read them, we asterisk understand them, we shape them." He leaned back, gesturing to the room, to the technology, to Kaido, to himself. "This is where the real work is done, where the future is forged." He lowered his voice, becoming confidential. "The Aegis are well-meaning, but they are living in the past. Their methods are obsolete. They are reactive, not proactive. And frankly, they are not entirely forthcoming. Do you know the full asterisk extent of their understanding? Their resources, what else might they be? Not asterisk telling you. He let the question hang in the air, a subtle poison. They aren't fully transparent or capable. The seed of doubt was planted. Your sensitivity, Mia, is extraordinary. With our technology, with our understanding, you could do more than just prevent minor incidents. You could help us guide this city, this world, towards a truly optimal future. We can offer you access to resources you can't imagine, the power to effect change on a scale Aegis could only dream of, a place at the forefront of temporal understanding. He stepped closer, his gaze intense. What do you say, Mia? Are you ready to move beyond simply hearing the echoes and learn to conduct the symphony? Mia felt the pull of his logic, the sheer power and potential on display. It was seductive, promising control in a world that suddenly felt overwhelmingly chaotic. The resources, the advanced technology, the vision of a perfectly ordered future. It was a tempting alternative to the subtle, often uncertain path of Aegis. But she also felt a profound chill at the ruthlessness, the disregard for individual choice. Vane spoke of optimal futures, but who defined optimal? And at what cost? She looked from Vane to the complex displays, then back to Kaito, standing silently beside the console. Vane's charisma was undeniable, his argument compelling in its cold efficiency. But something about the sheer scale of control, the willingness to discard free will as mere chaos, felt fundamentally wrong. Elias and Aegis felt like guardians, Vane felt like a conqueror. It's a lot to take in, Mr. Vane, Mia said, her voice slightly hoarse. Your technology is incredible. Your vision is certainly ambitious. Vane's smile didn't falter, but his eyes held a sharp impatience. Ambition is necessary for progress, Mia. Stagnation is the enemy. I understand you want an answer, Mia continued carefully, choosing her words. But Aegis just introduced me to this world. I need time to process everything I've seen today. 2. Weigh the different resonances. Vane considered her for a moment, the mask of charm slipping just slightly to reveal the calculating mind beneath. We appreciate careful consideration, Ms. Chen. However, the temporal flow does not wait. Opportunities and risks are fleeting. He didn't explicitly reiterate the threat from the message, but the implication hung heavy in the air. I understand the urgency, Mia said, but this isn't a simple choice. It's defining my reality. Leaving the gleaming, controlled world of the Chronos Institute felt like stepping back into a storm, but the air tasted different now. The cold, precise frequency of their technology vibrated against the chaotic possibility of the echoes she usually heard, a jarring counterpoint that resonated deep within her bones. Silas Vane's vision, seductive in its promise of order and terrifying in its clinical efficiency, warred with the quiet dedication and moral complexities of Elia's Thorn and Aegis. She carried the weight of both worlds now, a burden far heavier than any physical object. The path ahead, she knew, was no longer just about listening to future whispers. It was about interpreting them through a fractured lens, navigating a space where the lines between necessary intervention and ruthless control, between selfless prevention and calculated profit, blurred into an unnerving haze. Every subtle resonance would now demand not just understanding, but a choice. And as she walked away from Chronos, back into the city lights, the true resonance she felt was the growing pressure of a knowledge that promised power, but delivered only isolation and the daunting certainty that nothing would ever be simple again. The weight of knowledge, leaving the sterile precision of Chronos, felt like stepping back into a familiar storm, but the air inside Mia's walk-up apartment tasted different now, metallic, charged. The cold logic of Silas Vane's vision echoed relentlessly against the subtle, chaotic symphony of the timelines Elia's Thorn championed, a jarring counterpoint resonating deep within her bones. Surrounded by her research, notes from Aegis scattered beside the stark invitation from Chronos, the sheer weight of knowing pressed down, transforming the simple act of listening to future whispers into an agonizing calculus of control versus possibility. It had been over a week since her meeting with Vane, and the days had stretched into a disorienting blur of fragmented perceptions and relentless internal debate. Her apartment, usually a sanctuary of ordered chaos, now felt like a battleground for competing ideas. Piles of printed articles on market fluctuations sat beside scribbled notes from Elias on probability waves and the fragility of free will. A holographic projection from Chronos, a gift from Vane showcasing a hypothetical timeline manipulated for optimal resource allocation, hummed softly in a corner, its data streams sleek and persuasive in their predicted efficiency. Beside it lay a worn, leather-bound notebook from Aegis, filled with historical accounts of small, almost invisible interventions that had averted localized tragedies centuries ago. Her echo hearing had amplified, no longer just picking up clear warnings like the van or the warehouse collapse. Now, she perceived the edges asterisk of events, the faint, ghost-like outlines of potential outcomes that never fully solidified. It was like seeing the entire canvas of possibility for a fleeting moment before it dissolved back into the present. She could hear the faint asterisk psi asterisk of a timeline where the warehouse had asterisk collapsed, the muted echoes of sirens that never sounded on this asterisk timeline. These were the subtle victories of Aegis's nudges, yes, but they also highlighted the asterisk cost, the minor delays, the frayed nerves of those rerouted, the missed connections. Small things, perhaps, but unavoidable consequences of even the gentlest intervention. And then there were the echoes that seemed different. Less like a warning of a natural event and more like a low, persistent hum that felt asterisk-shaped, controlled. She tried to focus on one now, leaning back in her chair, closing her eyes. It was centered on the city's financial district, a complex weave of potential data streams and projected figures. It wasn't a clear prediction of a crash or a boom, but a subtle asterisk shift in the flow, like a stream being subtly diverted by an unseen hand. It felt manufactured. Vane's words replayed in her mind, smooth and logical. Aegis observes, Mia. They react. They do act asterisk. They let chaos dictate the board and then sweep up the mess. We understand the currents. We don't just predict the weather, we seed the clouds. Elias' voice countered, gentle but firm. Every choice ripples, Mia. Every direct action negates 1,000 other possibilities, other lives lived differently. Our role is guardians, not gods. The ambiguity of the financial echo gnawed at her. Was it a natural fluctuation, a consequence of a past, subtle Aegis intervention elsewhere, or was it a direct, calculated asterisk move by Chronos, planting the seed for a future gain? The possibility made her stomach clench. Aegis would likely ignore it, deeming it too complex, too subtle, too intertwined with natural chaos to warrant intervention, a perfect example of their perceived limitations, according to Vane. Chronos, however, this was their playground. They would see the thread of potential profit or power within that subtle shift and pull it, hard. The weight of this knowledge was suffocating. She, Mia Chen, journalist, apartment dweller, friend, was now privy to these hidden forces shaping the city, the world. And she was expected to choose a side in a conflict fought not with bullets, but with the delicate fabric of time itself. The isolation was profound. Who could she talk to about the humming city or the calculating eyes of Sela's Vane? Her friends lived in the ordinary reality, blessedly unaware of the temporal undertow. She needed air. Needed to see a familiar face, one not clouded by echoes or temporal philosophies. Picking up her comm unit, she sent a quick message. Hey, Chloe, free for coffee? Need to decompress. The cafe on the corner of her street was warm and smelled of roasted beans and sugar, a comforting scent that grounded her more effectively than any Aegis anchor technique. Chloe was already there, tucked into their usual corner booth, scrolling through something on her tablet, a bright splash of normalcy in Mia's increasingly surreal existence. Mia, hey, Chloe said, looking up with a genuine smile that made something tight in Mia's chest loosen a fraction. Long time felt like, everything okay? You look wired. Mia slid into the booth opposite her, forcing a smile. Hey, Chloe, yeah, just work, you know how it is. Chloe's eyebrows rose. Work. You're usually buzzing about a lead, not looking like you haven't slept in a week. That transit piece finally published? Mia shook her head, ordering a black coffee she probably didn't need but craved anyway. Nah, different thing, just hitting a wall on something else. Research is getting intense. She chose her words carefully, trying to convey the truth without revealing it. The city just feels loud lately, Like there's too much going on, too much noise, hard to filter through it all. Chloe leaned back, considering her. Loud, like construction or just general city overwhelm? Both, I guess, Mia hedged, stirring her coffee. It's hard to explain, like you're seeing everything at once, all the potential chaos simmering under the surface. Makes it hard to focus on just one thing. Chloe nodded slowly. Yeah, Ethelberg can be a beast. Especially lately, feels like the grid's always pinging, transit's messed up, everyone's jumpy. Remember that thing at the Nexus a while back? Everyone was talking about it for days, just this weird panic ripple, then nothing. Mia froze, her hand pausing mid-stir. The Nexus. The tsunami of echoes that had sent her fleeing in terror. Chloe saw it as a weird panic ripple. Elias had explained it was a potential catastrophe averted. This was it, the contrast laid bare. What he just prevented, the ordinary world perceived as a fleeting oddity, easily dismissed. It highlighted Aegis's subtlety, but also, cruelly, its lack of tangible impact, at least in the eyes of those they protected. It reinforced Vane's point. Aegis operates in the shadows, Mia. Their victories are invisible. Ours are undeniable. Yeah, Mia managed, taking a slow sip of coffee. Weird stuff happens. She forced herself to steer the conversation back to Chloe, asking about her job, her life, anything to anchor herself in this reality. Chloe chatted about her latest project, complaining about a difficult client, her voice a soothing, mundane balm. But even as Chloe spoke, Mia's enhanced hearing picked up the subtle temporal resonance around them. A faint echo of the barista spilling a drink before it happened. A brief flicker of someone tripping on the sidewalk outside before they caught themselves. Small, insignificant echoes, constantly shifting, constantly resolving. Aegis's philosophy was built on protecting these asterisk moments, millions upon millions of tiny potentials adding up to lives lived freely. Was that enough? Chloe noticed Mia's brief distraction, her gaze distant. Hey, you really are stressing, aren't you? She reached across the table, covering Mia's hand with her own. Listen, whatever it is, you'll figure it out. You always do. You're the most determined person I know. Just don't disappear on us, okay? We miss you. The simple gesture of warmth, the reminder of the life she had, made the weight of her hidden knowledge feel heavier. It wasn't just her own safety at stake anymore. It was the potential cost to these connections, this normalcy. If she dove deeper into the temporal world, how long before she couldn't connect with Chloe at all? How long before the echoes drowned out the sound of her best friend's voice? I won't, Mia promised, squeezing Chloe's hand, the lie feeling like a lead weight in her throat. Just need a little time to untangle things. Back in her apartment, the brief respite from Chloe faded, replaced by the persistent hum of the financial echo. It was still there, low and steady, a potential disruption waiting to happen or perhaps already being instigated. She messaged Elias via the secure Aegis channel. Financial sector echo. Subtle, persistent, feels influenced? The reply was almost immediate. Acknowledged, Mia, we see it. Complex. Many layers of resonance. Difficult to isolate cause. Suggest careful monitoring. Avoid direct interaction. Such areas are unpredictable. Unpredictable. Or, as Vane would say, ripe for manipulation. Aegis's caution felt like inaction. What if this subtle shift led to something significant? Something detrimental to ordinary people while Kronos profited? The dilemma was stark. Later that evening, a discreet notification pinged on her Aegis comm. A data packet from Elias, labeled asterisk, for context. Opening it, Mia found a carefully curated file, anonymized reports, public news clippings that had seemed innocuous at the time, overlaid with Aegis's internal echo analysis. It detailed a series of events approximately 6 months ago. A sudden, unexpected surge in the value of specific transit infrastructure bonds, coinciding with a minor, almost imperceptible shift in projected ridership data. A shift Mia could now recognize as a subtle echo manipulation. Publicly, it looked like shrewd market analysis or a lucky break for the investors who rode the wave. The news reported financial windfalls for a few large firms, among them shell companies Aegis linked to Kronos. But the file didn't stop there. It included reports filed after the event. Delayed maintenance schedules on aging lines, slight increases in commute times for lower-income districts suddenly deemed less profitable based on the skewed projections, minor public transit worker strikes simmering due to resource reallocation. Nothing catastrophic, nothing that made front-page headlines, but a slow, insidious erosion of public good for private gain. 1,000 tiny cuts, invisible to the Chronos executives counting their profits. Mia stared at the data, a chill spreading through her. This wasn't just about averting disasters. It was about the constant, unseen struggle over the shape of the future, the subtle ways power could be accumulated and lives could be subtly disadvantaged, all hidden within the temporal resonance. Chronos wasn't just theoretical about shaping destiny. They were actively doing it, leaving a trail of unseen harm. The financial echo she was currently perceiving felt different now. Not just ambiguous, but ominous. If Chronos was behind this subtle shift, what was their end goal? And if Aegis wouldn't act on something this complex and subtle, who would? The weight of the knowledge she carried felt unbearable, a leaden cloak woven from unseen data streams and future possibilities. The financial echo still thrummed, a complex, agonizing question mark over ethical intervention, highlighting the terrifying scope of responsibility she now bore. Was she merely a passive observer, or was she obligated to step into the flow of time itself, to tug at threads that might unravel unforeseen consequences? The abstract moral dilemma pressed down, demanding an answer she didn't have, forcing her to confront the chilling reality that standing still was no longer an option. But before she could begin to untangle that Gordian knot of ethics and foresight, a new sound cut through the background hum of the city. It wasn't a whisper of future finances or a distant murmur of political shifts. It was a sharp, piercing cry, an echo vibrant with the raw energy of imminent, physical catastrophe, closer and clearer than anything she had experienced before. This wasn't a theoretical problem waiting for a perfect answer. It was a ticking clock, a desperate warning of immediate peril that slammed into her, demanding not philosophical debate, but urgent, decisive action. The sidelines had just dissolved. Crossroads and consequences, the sharp, piercing cry that cut through the city's hum demanded not philosophical debate, but immediate physical action. Unlike the subtle manipulations and complex probabilities of the financial district, this echo thrummed with a raw, unmistakable urgency, vibrating with the clear imprint of imminent catastrophe. Already situated within the Aegis sanctum, the shift in focus was instantaneous and absolute. The monitors glowed with alarm data confirming the scale of the new temporal anomaly. Elias Thorne turned from a console, his expression tight, the silence between them thick with the knowledge that the abstract fight had just become terrifyingly real. "Mia, did you feel that?" Elias' voice was low, stripped of its usual gentle cadence. He gestured to the central holographic display in the sanctum, which usually showed a shimmering, complex web of resonance patterns across Ethelberg. Now, a single, violently pulsing red node dominated the projection, centered over the grid district housing the city's primary power distribution hub and several major financial institutions. Mia didn't need the display. The echo was a scream in her mind, a chaotic, physical sensation of tearing metal, bursting energy, and the smell of burning ozone mingling with something acrid and chemical. It was clearer, sharper, and felt horrifyingly close to the present moment than anything she'd experienced before, even the Grand Nexus. This wasn't a ripple, it was a wave about to break. "Yes," she breathed, her hands instinctively going to her temples. It's violent, power, something huge failing. Near the old Baxter substation?" Elias nodded grimly, his gaze sweeping across the data streams scrolling on his own console. "Substation Gamma Prime. It's a linchpin for the downtown grid. An overload looks like, or a cascade failure triggered by something else. Aegis monitors picked up the initial signature seconds ago, but your perception, it's faster, more visceral." He paused, meeting her eyes. "The echo predicts a full grid collapse across sectors B, C, and D mass blackouts, transit chaos, critical system failures for hours. Potential for significant injury, maybe even fatalities, as systems go dark unexpectedly." Around them, the quiet hum of the Sanctum monitoring station had sharpened into a low thrum of focused urgency. Other Aegis members were moving with practiced efficiency, their faces reflecting the same grim determination. The financial district echo, so unsettling just hours ago, now felt like background static compared to this. This was a disaster they couldn't afford to simply monitor. The echo timeframe? Mia asked, forcing herself to focus, pushing past the physical shockwave of the resonance. Immediate, Elias confirmed, his fingers flying across his interface. Initial projections put the critical failure point 22 minutes from now, maybe less. 22 minutes. Mia felt a fresh surge of panic, cold, and sharp. This wasn't some slow burn manipulation or a potential future months away. This was happening asterisk now asterisk. "What's the plan?" she asked, her journalistic instinct kicking in, demanding clarity and steps. "Aegis protocols for a high-severity, imminent echo," Elias explained, pulling up a new projection, a schematic of the Gamma Prime substation and the surrounding grid. "Our goal is minimal intervention, maximum mitigation. We can't stop the initial failure entirely. The potential energy buildup is too significant in the temporal field, but we can redirect the cascade, bleed off some energy before it hits the critical nodes, maybe trigger a phased, localized shutdown instead of a full collapse." He pointed to a specific junction on the schematic. "There's an older failsafe protocol here, designed for controlled overload diversion, but largely decommissioned. It would require a specific trigger sequence, injected directly into the grid's legacy management system, anonymous, untraceable if done correctly. It's risky, it could cause minor localized disruption, maybe a brief flicker or brownout in a small area, but it would avert the wider catastrophe. Our analysis suggests this is the least disruptive path that maintains system integrity elsewhere and gives responders time to react." Mia focused inward again, honing her senses on the roaring echo of the substation failure. She wasn't just feeling the structural collapse and energy discharge anymore. Elias had taught her to look deeper, for the asterisk texture asterisk of the echo, the human elements caught within the temporal static. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly, centering herself as Elias had taught her. The roar of the echo became less a solid wall of sound and more a chorus of fragmented information. She heard the tearing metal, yes, the crackle of power, but she also heard something else. A voice, distant but clear within the noise, a frustrated shout. The squeal of worn bearings. The asterisk smell wasn't just ozone, it was also burnt coffee and stale air, the scent of a control room. And timing, the echo pulsed with a rhythm that didn't quite match the precise 22-minute countdown Elias cited. It felt delayed somehow, tied to a human action, not just a system failure. "Elias," she opened her eyes, her voice tight with concentration. "It's not just the system failing. There's a human element. An engineer, someone working near the failure point. The echo feels tied to them finishing something or making a mistake just before it goes critical. And the timing, it feels like the failure cascade starts just after they make a specific input into a console. It's a few seconds later than your 22 minutes. Like there, the accidental trigger, compounding an existing problem." Elias stared at her, his initial urgency mixed with profound interest. A human factor triggered by a specific input. That level of detail? He quickly adjusted his parameters on his console, running a simulation incorporating a delayed trigger tied to a hypothetical human action. The predicted outcome shifted slightly, the timing of the cascade adjusted by mere seconds, but critically, it changed the optimal injection point for their failsafe trigger by a fraction of a second. "Your perception is extraordinary, Mia," he said, admiration replacing the urgency for a fleeting moment. "Those few seconds, that human context, it's exactly the kind of nuance our technology can miss, but which is vital for pinpointing the most effective, least disruptive intervention. It confirms the failsafe injection point we planned is still viable, but the timing is even more critical. We need to initiate the protocol at exactly T-2157, not 22 minutes. That human action is the final variable." He turned back to the console. "I'll prepare the injection sequence." It needs to be triggered from outside the sanctum to maintain deniability if anything goes wrong. A mobile interface, you'll need to be near the affected district to ensure minimal signal loss at the critical moment. He hesitated, looking at her. This is high risk, Mia. You don't have to do this. We can use a different operative, but your unique insight makes you uniquely suited to ensure the timing is precise. Mia didn't hesitate. The horrifying clarity of the echo, the knowledge of the panic and chaos it represented, overwhelmed any fear. She had seen the consequence of inaction, felt the weight of Vane's philosophy in the financial district echo. This wasn't abstract manipulation. This was saving people from immediate harm. I'll do it. Where do I need to be? As Elias was prepping the secure mobile interface and coordinating logistics, Mia's private comms channel, the one Kronos had used for their initial contact, pinged. An encrypted inbound call. Recognizing the signature, a knot tightened in her stomach. They knew, of course they knew. Kronos perceived these echoes too, but with a different lens, a different agenda. She excused herself from the immediate flurry of activity, moving to a small, shielded alcove within the sanctum. Elias gave her a sharp look but nodded understandingly. He knew this call was inevitable. Accepting the call, Kaito Tanaka's face materialized on the small screen, cool and composed as always. He wasn't in the opulent Kronos Institute office from her last visit. The background was a featureless, sterile gray, suggesting he was in a secure, mobile command center. Ms. Chen, Kaito's voice was smooth, devoid of urgency despite the impending disaster. We detected your increased temporal resonance signature regarding the substation gamma prime anomaly. A critical event, wouldn't you agree? Mia didn't respond, just watched him, her jaw tight. Kaito continued, unfazed. Our analysis confirms the high probability of a grid collapse. Aegis, we presume, is scrambling to implement one of their subtle nudges. A faint hint of disdain touched his lips. Inefficient, reactive, like swatting at individual raindrops when a flood is coming. He leaned slightly closer to the camera. Kronos, however, sees opportunity in predictability. We have refined our own response protocols for this event. Rather than attempting a precarious fail-safe injection into antiquated systems, we will initiate a controlled load distribution shift across the city's auxiliary grids. This will cause a brief, managed brownout in a specific sector, Sector A, primarily residential, redirecting enough load to absorb the gamma prime surge without cascading failure elsewhere. Minimal disruption to critical infrastructure or commercial activity, unlike the widespread chaos of an uncontrolled collapse or the unpredictable consequences of Aegis's patchwork fix. Mia felt a chill. A controlled asterisk brownout, affecting a asterisk residential asterisk sector, while leaving the financial and commercial hubs untouched. It was the Kronos philosophy laid bare. Prioritize strategic value, manage the impact on their asterisk terms, and view individuals or non-essential areas as acceptable collateral for the optimal outcome. That would inconvenience thousands of people, Mia stated flatly, ignoring the pressure behind his words. Kaito's expression remained impassive. Temporary, manageable, far preferable to widespread panic and systemic collapse. Our method is precise, predictable, and guarantees the integrity of the grid where it matters most for city function and economic stability. He paused, his gaze sharp. We understand your unique sensitivity allows you to perceive nuances within the echo, Ms. Chen. Timing, human variables, details Aegis might find useful. We, too, require that level of precision for our controlled reroute to be optimally efficient. Share your insights with us. Cooperate and you will see the true power of shaping destiny, not just reacting to its whims. The offer hung in the air, heavy with implied consequence if she refused. Kronos wasn't just asking for information, they were demanding allegiance, participation in their cold calculus. You want me to help you decide which part of the city to plunge into darkness, Mia said, the disgust evident in her voice. Kaito's features didn't soften. We are mitigating disaster, Ms. Chen. Every temporal event has consequences. We simply choose which consequences are acceptable and for whom. Aegis leaves it to chance and hopes for the best. That is not a sustainable strategy in this new reality. The echo roared in her mind, clearer now than Kaito's voice. The smell of burnt coffee, the frustrated shout, the slight delay tied to that human touch on a console. Her unique insight wasn't just data. It was a window into the asterisk why asterisk of the failure, the confluence of a physical problem and a human error. Aegis wanted to prevent the asterisk failure based on her timing. Kronos wanted to manage the fallout based on her timing. But what if her insight offered a third way? I have my own understanding of the event, Mia said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. She wouldn't give them her specific details. Not for their plan. Kaito's eyes narrowed fractionally. A disappointing response, Ms. Chen. Your talents are wasted on Aegis's idealism. Time is running short. The decision point for initiating our protocol is imminent. We strongly advise you to reconsider your alignment. The screen flickered, and Kaito's face vanished. The pressure didn't dissipate, it intensified. Now she wasn't just choosing between two philosophies. She was actively defying one of them, one that saw her insight as a commodity and viewed human free will as an impediment. Mia stood on an elevated pedestrian walkway overlooking the edge of the affected grid district. Below, traffic flowed normally. Pedestrians hurried about their day, blissfully unaware of the temporal shadow stretching over them. The air still hummed with the city's usual frequencies, but beneath it, the roar of the Gamma Prime echo was a physical weight against her eardrums. A countdown clock felt in her bones. Elias was on a secure comms channel, his voice tight with controlled tension. Mia, status? The window is closing. We're at T-5 minutes. Is the interface ready? In her hand, she held the small, encrypted datapad Elias had given her. It was loaded with the Aegis failsafe trigger sequence, designed to subtly disrupt the legacy system at the substation at precisely the right microsecond to avert the cascade failure. But her unique insight gnawed at her. The human element. The engineer, caught in the temporal echo, their frustrated shout, the click of the console just seconds before the surge became critical. The Aegis plan was designed to counteract the asterisk system failure. At the exact moment, it was predicted to go critical. But her echo felt like the human action was the final trigger, the straw that broke the camel's back, slightly delaying the asterisk start asterisk of the cascade. If she triggered the Aegis sequence based on Elia's T-21, 57 calculation, which was based on the asterisk system prediction, it might be too early before the human element played out and potentially fail or cause a worse, untraceable anomaly. If she waited for the human trigger she sensed, that was her own untested timing, based on a subjective echo perception. It was terrifyingly uncertain, T-4 minutes. The echo intensified, the sounds of tearing metal sharper, the scent of ozone stronger. She could almost see the phantom image of sparks dancing in her periphery. She heard a secondary ping on her secure comms, a message from Kronos. A single line of text, decision point reached. Initiating controlled reroute in 30 seconds. Your timing data requested one final time. KT 30 seconds until Kronos acted. 30 seconds until they plunged a residential sector into darkness to save a commercial one. Aegis planned minimal disruption, but relied on precise, human-influenced timing. Kronos planned controlled disruption and relied on their own rigid system-based timing, but they still wanted her asterisk data for maximum efficiency, a chilling blend of control and exploitation. T-3 minutes. Mia looked down at the datapad in her hand. The trigger sequence was ready. Elias was waiting. Kronos was waiting. The city below was oblivious. She closed her eyes, pulling the echo closer. The burnt coffee, the shouted curse, the frantic tapping on a console, the final click, asterisk then the tearing metal. It wasn't 21:57 anymore. It was 21:54. The human variable had slightly delayed the point of no return from the initial system stress. Elia's timing was based on the asterisk system reaching critical mass. Her timing was based on the asterisk human interaction tipping it over the edge. A third option solidified in her mind, one born from her unique insight and a refusal to accept either organization's full plan. Aegis's target was correct, preventing the main failure, but their timing was slightly off without her specific echo details. Kronos' target was abhorrent, controlled, selective failure, and their timing was based on a less precise model of the echo. She wouldn't use the Aegis interface to trigger their failsafe at their timing. She wouldn't give Kronos her timing data to execute their asterisk plan. But her unique insight into the precise critical second, informed by the human element in the echo, was the most powerful tool she had. T-2 minutes. She quickly opened a separate, simple command line interface on the datapad, a basic network access tool Elias had shown her for field observations. She didn't have the complex sequence for the failsafe, but she had something else. A small, untraceable burst of data she could inject into the adjacent asterisk legacy system. Not the failsafe trigger itself, but a tiny, precisely timed data packet designed to mimic a specific, low-priority system anomaly. The kind that would trigger an asterisk early warning in the control room, specifically on an older terminal that an engineer working late might still be monitoring. Her unique echo told her the engineer was distracted, frustrated, making a critical input. A sudden, unexpected non-critical asterisk alert might snap their focus back to the older system interface, might make them double-check their work in those crucial few seconds before the cascade started. It was a long shot. It wasn't a guaranteed prevention like the failsafe sequence could asterisk have been. It wasn't a controlled outcome like Kronos planned. It was a gamble, a subtle nudge based entirely on the human element she alone perceived. It honored Aegis's philosophy of minimal intervention and preserving free will, but used her insight in a way neither organization had prescribed. She focused on the echo, felt the precise microsecond when that human hand clicked the console, felt the initial ripple of the cascade begin just after. Now asterisk. She executed the command. A tiny, undetectable data packet surged from her datapad, targeting the specific subnet near the substation control room. T-1 minute. Nothing happened immediately. The echo still roared. The datapad confirmed the packet was sent. Elias was calling again, his voice edged with anxiety. Mia, the window is almost closed. Are you initiating the sequence? She didn't answer, her eyes fixed on the dark shape of the substation structure, barely visible in the distance. Kronos' deadline for their reroute passed. Did they initiate it anyway? She didn't feel the distinct temporal signature of a controlled brownout appearing elsewhere on the grid, but that didn't mean they hadn't acted. T-30 seconds. The echo peaked, a cacophony of noise and feeling. The moment the cascade asterisk should asterisk have started according to Aegis's initial timing. She held her breath. T-10 seconds. The moment her echo predicted the human action would trigger the critical failure. Then, a shift. Not a collapse, but a subtle, almost imperceptible sigh in the temporal field. The roar of the echo didn't disappear, but it changed pitch, becoming less a scream of imminent destruction and more a hum of averted catastrophe. On a nearby lamppost, the lights flickered once, briefly, a tiny, localized instability. Traffic on the street below continued, cars navigating the intersection without issue. There was no sudden blackout, no sound of distant explosions or tearing metal reaching her ears from the substation. Mia, what happened? Elia's voice was filled with confused relief. Our monitors, the anomaly signature is dissipating. The cascade didn't happen, not the way it was predicted. There was a localized system blip, looks like an early warning triggered asterisk within their legacy system, followed by an emergency manual override confirmation. Just seconds before the predicted failure point. Gamma Prime is stable. What did you do? She looked at the datapad in her hand. She hadn't triggered the failsafe. She had sent a ghost. A timed whisper into the system based on a human element she perceived in the future. I didn't use the main sequence, Elias, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly with the adrenaline crash and the sheer disbelief that it had worked. I sent a different signal, based on the human factor in the echo. It seems it triggered an early alert, just in time. A beat of silence on the line. Then, Elia's voice, slow and filled with wonder. You didn't prevent the asterisk system failure. You used the echo to influence the human asterisk element. You averted the disaster by allowing free will to correct a mistake, guided by temporal insight. That's something we hadn't fully considered. Mia had made her move, an unscheduled beat in the city's temporal rhythm that Kronos and Scylla's vein could not ignore. It wasn't just that she had succeeded, it was asterisk how. Independent, uncontrolled. She had used her unique gift not as a tool for their agenda, but as a force outside of it, a clear signal that she would not be managed. The quiet hum of Ethelberg now felt like a held breath, the city itself a stage set for a brutal response. This wasn't merely the end of a temporal disruption. It was the overture to something far larger, a direct challenge that the architect of Kronos would answer with devastating precision. She knew Scylla's vein would see this defiance not as a setback, but as a variable to be crushed or, perhaps more chillingly, incorporated into a grander design. Her interference had simply accelerated the timeline, pushing the conflict out of the shadows and onto the streets of Ethelberg in a way that would shake the city to its very core. The echoes she had heard before felt distant, fragile, compared to the tremor already beginning in the periphery of her senses. A vast, complex resonance building, promising not localized anomaly, but an overwhelming, city-altering catastrophe unlike anything she could have imagined. The game had just begun, and the stakes had suddenly, terrifyingly, become millions of lives. The city's pulse falters the quiet hum of Ethelberg, so recently a held breath after the substation crisis, shattered. Not with the sharp crack of localized disruption, but with a deep, resonant asterisk thrum that vibrated not just through the temporal currents, but through the very bedrock of the city. Mia staggered back in her small apartment, senses reeling as the tremor she'd felt building erupted into a horrifyingly vivid projection. A catastrophe painted across Ethelberg's future, vast and complex, carrying the cold signature of intentional design. This wasn't a prediction, it was an orchestrated inevitability, and she knew, with sickening certainty, that Scylla's vein had just tightened his grip around the city's terrified pulse. Mia clutched the edge of her kitchen counter, breath ragged. The echo wasn't just auditory or visual like the others. It was a full sensory assault, a tsunami of projected collapse. She saw jagged lines representing grid failures spiderwebbing across familiar sector maps overlaid on her vision. She heard the cacophony of panicked voices, distant sirens fading into silence, the grinding halt of the city's intricate transit systems. The air felt thick with the metallic tang of burned electronics and the cold fear of millions. This wasn't confined to a single building or transit hub, it was asterisk everywhere. The scale was unimaginable, affecting countless lives, bringing the hyperconnected metropolis to its knees. Most chillingly, the echo felt structured. Past echoes, even the chaotic Nexus one, had felt like turbulent currents, probabilities jostling for dominance. This felt like a river redirected, forced down a specific, destructive channel. There was a cold precision to it, a sense of deliberate sequencing. First this system fails, then that one cascades, isolating sectors, paralyzing infrastructure, culminating in widespread chaos and vulnerability. It was less an echo of what might happen, and more an echo of what was being made to happen. Her datapad chimed, vibrating with an incoming secure call. Elia's Thorn. She fumbled to accept it, his face appearing on the screen, etched with the same grim comprehension she felt. Mia, you feel it. His voice was tight, strained. Elia's, it's everywhere, she managed, her own voice trembling. The city, it's going dark, complete system collapse, transit comms power. We know, Elia said, his image flickering slightly. He was likely in the sanctum, surrounded by the screaming monitors. It hit the network hard. Every active hearer across the city just got slammed. We're getting reports. It's unprecedented. But Mia, he leaned closer to the camera, his eyes sharp, your perception? Is it just the what asterisk or the how? Mia focused, pushing past the wave of projected panic threatening to engulf her. The structure, the cold precision. It feels engineered, Elias, like someone is pulling specific threads. It's not random confluence. It's a domino effect, but the dominoes were set up. Based on temporal patterns, on echo knowledge. Elias nodded slowly, the grim lines around his mouth deepening. Our analysis matches. This isn't a natural temporal trajectory. It's orchestrated, a manufactured crisis. Vein, Mia breathed, the name tasting like ash. Scylla's vein, Elias confirmed, his voice hardening. We suspected he was testing the waters, manipulating minor events, but this is a full-scale assault on the city's core systems, on its very pulse. Why? What does he gain from this? Chaos, Elias said simply. A reset. Eliminate perceived obstacles like Aegis. Impose his vision of optimal order by first creating utter disorder. Control through catastrophe. He likely intends to ride out the storm, then step in with his solution, his controlled future built on the ruins. Dread coiled in Mia's gut. Can Aegis stop it? Elias looked away for a moment, his gaze distant. When he looked back, his usual steady calm was fractured by something close to despair. Mia, this is beyond our standard protocols, beyond our capabilities for subtle intervention. Our network is encountering significant resistance. It feels like Chronos anticipated our moves, blocked our usual points of entry. Either their tech is neutralizing us, or he used his foresight to strategically position assets and countermeasures across the temporal field, creating blind spots blocking our nudges. We're stretched thinner than ever. This is, on a scale we haven't faced. Mia understood. Aegis relied on delicate adjustments, small nudges to avert disaster while preserving free will. This wasn't a potential disaster to be nudged. It was a freight train being deliberately driven off a cliff. Nudging the tracks wouldn't stop it. The echo persisted, a constant, low thrum of impending doom beneath the city's normal sounds. The projected suffering felt real, a crushing weight on her conscience. Millions of lives. The thought was unbearable. Was this truly inevitable? Or was there something else? Just as Elias was outlining the desperate, near-impossible calculations Aegis was running, Mia's datapad displayed an incoming call from an encrypted, unknown number. She hesitated, then the name flashed, Sela's Vane. He's calling, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Be careful, Mia, Elias warned. He wants something from you. He knows what you did at the substation. He knows your precision is unique. Don't give him anything. Mia ended the call with Elias, her heart pounding. She took a deep breath, bracing herself, and accepted the incoming video call from Vane. His face appeared on the screen, framed by the minimalist, gleaming white background of the Chronos Institute. He was calm, almost serenely composed, a stark contrast to the storm of temporal chaos Mia was perceiving. There was no accusation in his eyes, only cool, assessing interest. Mia Chen, Vane said, his voice smooth, lacking the usual corporate polish, replaced by something more intimate, more predatory. We need to talk about the city's pulse. I know what you're doing, Vane, Mia countered, trying to keep her voice steady. He smiled, a slight, unsettling curve of his lips. You perceive the outcome, yes, the unfortunate necessity. But do you understand the asterisk why? Do you understand that this isn't an act of malice, Mia? It's an act of surgical correction. Mia stared at him, appalled. Correction? This is mass suffering, Vane. You're deliberately collapsing the city. The city is inefficient, Vane said, his tone shifting to that of a clinical analyst. Its systems are brittle, its temporal flow chaotic, its population mired in unpredictable free will. It is prone to larger, less manageable catastrophes. The substation incident was merely a preview, a minor tremor. And this is your solution? This is the only asterisk way to impose true stability, Vane stated, leaning forward slightly. To prune the chaotic branches, to ensure a resilient predictable future for the remaining population. Think of it, Mia. The temporal field is a wild, untamed ocean. Most drown in it. Aegis tries to bail water with a sieve. We build a sea wall, a dam, we harness the flow. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The echoes around Mia seemed to resonate with his cold logic. The sheer scale of the impending disaster lending a terrible credibility to his inevitability. Your ability, Mia, Vane continued, his voice softening slightly, becoming persuasive, is extraordinary, the precision with which you identified the human variable at the substation. It's something our TRT cannot replicate. Not yet, at least. You perceive the subtle human currents within the grand temporal flow. You don't just see the pattern, you feel the individual threads. He leaned back again, a calculated gesture. This impending event, it has a complex sequence. Millions of nodal points of failure, each with a human element, however small. Our TRT can predict the system failures, but the precise timing, the minute shifts caused by human response, that's where you come in. Mia felt a chill colder than the projected grid failure. She knew what he was going to offer. I am initiating countermeasures, Vane announced, his gaze unwavering. Contingency plans to manage the collapse, to minimize unnecessary asterisk loss of life, and to rebuild with reinforced stability. To guide the city towards a future of predictable prosperity, free from the random cruelty of uncontrolled temporal currents. And you need my help to navigate the human element of your manufactured disaster? Mia finished, her voice tight with disgust. Precisely, Vane confirmed, completely unfazed by her revulsion. Your perception is crucial for optimizing the containment, for ensuring key personnel are moved, for predicting localized human responses to the system failures. You can save millions, Mia, my asterisk way, by helping me guide this necessary correction. He held her gaze. The alternative is allowing the current chaos to unfold unchecked or relying on Aegis's futile reactive nudges. You saw how easily our foresight neutralized their capabilities for this event. They cannot stop this, Mia. You know that now. The future I project is the only asterisk-stable outcome possible from this point. Refusal means allowing untold further suffering for the sake of a romanticized notion of free will that leads only to greater catastrophe. He appealed directly to her desire to prevent suffering, leveraging the horrifying echo she was experiencing. Save millions, but become complicit in the suffering of others. Help Vane reshape the city's future, but at the cost of individual agency. It was the ultimate utilitarian argument, stark and brutal. Mia looked at the projected grid collapse, heard the faint screams. The scale was horrifying. Vane's vision, though monstrous, offered a chilling sense of control, of minimizing loss through decisive action. But looking at him, seeing the cold calculation in his eyes, the casual dismissal of individual lives as unnecessary loss or chaotic impediments, she saw the true horror. He wasn't just managing a disaster. He was using it to solidify his control, to strip away the very essence of what made the city, and the people in it, alive, their messy, unpredictable free will. Yet, amidst the overwhelming force of Vane's projected inevitability, the precise, structured echo, Mia perceived something else. Faint, like a whisper against a hurricane. Not another distinct outcome, but subtle points of divergence within the projected collapse. Tiny, unstable fluctuations, tied to the precise moments he needed her unique perception for. Weaknesses in the inevitable structure, places where the human element he so disdained might, just might, create an opening for something else. It was almost invisible to standard echo hearing, certainly beyond Kronos' technology, focused as it was on system-wide probabilities. It required her unique, human-centered precision. A desperately fragile, incredibly difficult alternative path. Think about it, Mia, Vane said, his voice dropping slightly. The clock is ticking. Your unique insight could save countless lives. Acknowledge the inevitable and help me shape it, or cling to a lost cause and watch the city drown. Mia didn't respond immediately. She stared at him, then at the superimposed network of projected failures across her vision. The scale of his manipulation was breathtaking, terrifying. Preventing this disaster, Vane's way, meant validating his philosophy, becoming a cog in his machine of control. Not acting meant watching the echo become reality. She ended the call abruptly, leaving Vane's calm, calculating face behind. The silence in her apartment felt deafening, broken only by the relentless thrum of the citywide echo. She needed to talk to Elias. Mia moved through the city on autopilot, the pervasive echo making every step feel heavy, every familiar landmark seem frail and temporary. She bypassed the Chronicle, the thought of its bustling, oblivious ordinariness now feeling impossibly distant. Her feet carried her towards the muted archives building, towards the hidden entrance to the Aegis Sanctum. Entering the sanctum felt like stepping into the heart of the storm. The main monitoring chamber was a hive of frantic activity. Holographic displays flickered with red lines indicating critical system stress across Ethelberg. The air hummed with the raw energy of unfiltered echoes, a cacophony that Mia could now filter, focusing on the single, dominant, citywide catastrophe. Other Aegis members moved with grim purpose, faces strained, barking urgent data points. Elias met her as she entered, his face etched with worry. "Mia, Vane called you." It wasn't a question. "He did," she confirmed. "He outlined his plan." "He's doing this, Elias. He's orchestrating the collapse." She recounted the conversation, Vane's chilling pragmatism, his offer, his need for her unique perception. Elias listened, his expression growing darker with each word. "It's worse than we thought. A full-spectrum temporal manipulation, using echo knowledge to trigger system vulnerabilities across the city, and his positioning. He's neutralized our ability to intervene subtly at the critical nodes. It's like he foresaw our every possible angle of approach and erected temporal barriers, redirecting the chaotic currents into his chosen path." He gestured to the monitors, which painted a bleak picture. "Our network is detecting the pressure points, the impending failures, but we can't counteract them without brute-forcing system overrides, which is exactly what Chronos is designed to handle and block. Our usual methods of nudging individual decisions or tiny system glitches are useless against this level of coordinated control." Despair hung heavy in the air. Aegis, built on preserving free will through subtle intervention, was powerless against a force that sought to eliminate it through controlled chaos. "He needs me," Mia said, "for the human element. The micro-timings, the individual responses within the cascade. He needs my precision to optimize his containment. And he offered you a place," Elias finished, his voice low, "to help him manage the inevitable, to save millions, his way." Mia nodded. It felt overwhelming. The echo is so strong, Elias. It screams of inevitability, and his logic. It's monstrous, but it has a terrible internal consistency. He believes this is the only way to prevent worse chaos later. "At the cost of everything we stand for," Elias countered, his gaze fierce. "At the cost of billions of individual choices, of the city's soul." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "But he's right about one thing, Mia. We can't stop this head-on. Not with our current capabilities, not against this kind of orchestrated event." The weight of Elias' words pressed down on Mia. The Aegis Sanctum, usually a beacon of calm purpose, now felt like a command center preparing for defeat. But there was something else, Mia said hesitantly, recalling the faint sensation during her conversation with Vane. "When he was talking about his plan, about the micro-timings, I felt slivers, tiny moments within the projected chaos that weren't as set as the rest. Fluctuations tied to the human points he needs me for, like incredibly fragile points of divergence. Not a clear alternative echo, but possibilities." Elias' eyes widened slightly. Possibilities within that asterisk echo. "We see nothing but the dominant trajectory, the one he's enforcing, our tech. It can't isolate such fine-grained temporal instability within a controlled cascade." "That's what I mean," Mia said, the thought solidifying in her mind. "His tech focuses on the macro, on system-wide patterns and probabilities. My hearing, it's about the human, the subtle shifts, the near misses, the moments of individual choice. Maybe that's where the structure is weakest. At the points where the human element he dismisses intersects with his rigid plan." Elias stared at her, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes, quickly tempered by the immense difficulty. "Mia, if that's true, if there are actual points of potential divergence within a manipulated echo of this scale, it would require an intervention of unprecedented precision, something based entirely on your unique perception. Something neither Aegis nor Chronos, with their reliance on broader temporal flows, could achieve." He looked at the monitors again, then back at Mia, the full weight of the crisis settling on her shoulders. "But where? How? This event? It's citywide, it's nexus, it's heart. It's everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Unless there's a single point, a linchpin. A place where all the temporal threads he's manipulating converge or radiate from." Mia closed her eyes, focusing on the overwhelming echo, trying to find a center, a source. The city's pulse was faltering, but there had to be an origin point, a central node from which Vane was controlling the cascade. She pushed past the noise, listening for the subtle hum of manipulation, the cold signature of design. It wasn't a physical location she saw at first, but a concept asterisk. A central artery. The heart of the city's connectivity. Where all lines crossed, where all systems met, the digital and the physical, the past and the potential future. Then, a name resonated in the echo, a location tied to the deepest hum of the controlled cascade, to the points of planned failure, and to the faint, struggling possibilities she had perceived. Not the grand nexus, too chaotic for vain, sterile control. Not the Chronos Institute itself, too isolated. Something else. Something fundamental. The city's true center of gravity. The Meridian. The name hit her with the force of revelation. The place where all the critical infrastructures converged, the historical and the futuristic, the visible and the hidden. The place Vane would need to control absolutely to orchestrate this level of collapse. That was where the cascade was being triggered. That was where the faint possibilities might converge. Elias saw the realization dawn on her face. Mia. What is it? The Meridian, she breathed. That's where he's doing it. That's the linchpin. Elias looked shocked, then understanding dawned. The Meridian was more than just a location. It was a node of temporal significance, a hub where past, present, and future echoes often tangled. It makes sense. Chronos would need to control such a focal point to ensure a citywide collapse is both devastating and manageable according to his plan. And the possibilities I saw, Mia continued, a desperate resolve hardening her gaze, the moments of divergence, they're strongest there. It's incredibly faint, Elias. It's not a clear path, just potential, a ghost in the machine he built. Elias' face was grim. Even if there's a sliver of a chance, Mia, the Meridian will be heavily guarded. Temporally and physically, Chronos will have every angle covered. She knew what she had to do. The Meridian called, a dangerous focal point in the temporal storm, the only place left where the fragile possibility she sensed might take root. But the catastrophic echo was no longer a distant thrum. It was a rising tide, vibrating in her bones, in the very concrete beneath her feet. Across Ethelberg, the first cracks were appearing in the world's carefully constructed facade. Power flickered and died, the automated symphony of traffic devolved into jarring metal, and the distant wail of sirens began its desperate, escalating chorus, the sound of Vane's inevitability arriving, moment by terrible moment. Every step towards the skyline meridian would be a race against clockwork precision, a desperate gamble against a collapsing reality. Ahead lay the heart of his engineered catastrophe, absolute and heavily guarded. But within that darkness, she clung to the faintest whisper of something else, a path born not of prediction, but of defiant will. She had to reach that impossible point, find that fragile truth hidden within Vane's storm, and unleash her own echo into the heart of his design. Or the city's pulse, and the fundamental potential she fought for, would falter, forever extinguished. The meridian choiced the pavement trembled under Mia's feet, a mirror to the city's seismic collapse. Sirens began their mournful crescendo as she sprinted away from the temporary safety of the sanctum, weaving through panicked crowds and stalled vehicles. Every sense screamed the deepening reality of Vane's engineered inevitable disaster. The smell of ozone from failing grids, the shudder of collapsing infrastructure, the raw fear of millions. But her internal echo hearing focused only on the distant, dangerous call of the meridian, where that faint thread of possibility still whispered its defiance. This was a race against clockwork precision, a desperate gamble to find that fragile truth hidden within Vane's storm before the city's pulse faltered forever. A block away, the lights in a sleek vertical farm blinked out, one floor at a time, plunging its glowing hydroponic levels into sudden darkness. A sickening crunch echoed down the street. A self-driving garbage truck, its navigation system fried by the cascading grid failure, had plowed into a historic brownstone. The air, usually a mix of exhaust and distant commerce, now carried the acrid scent of stressed electronics and the primal tang of fear. Mia ran, her lungs burning, her echo hearing a terrifying symphony of despair. Screams rose from a stalled transit tube entrance. The comforting, familiar hum of the city was being replaced by a tearing sound, like fabric ripping through reality itself. Elia's voice, strained and tinny, crackled through the secure calm Mia still wore. "Mia, report. Are you clear of the sanctum?" "Clear," she gasped, dodging a family huddled by a shuttered shop. "The collapse, it's happening, just like the echo." "Worse," Elias said grimly. "Vane's timing was impeccable. Sector C just lost primary power, secondary failing. Transit is frozen citywide. Communications are spotty. His primary disruption is hitting hard. Mia felt it like a physical blow, the sudden silence in the airwaves, the dead weight of her comm unit as Elia's voice cut out entirely. He was right. Aegis's network, designed for subtle nudges, was being overwhelmed by Vane's brutal, comprehensive assault. "The Meridian, are you still going there?" Elia's voice flickered back, weaker this time. "Yes," Mia confirmed, pushing past a tangle of abandoned courier bots. "It's the only place I saw it, the slivers. They converge there, Elias. In the core echo, it's the linchpin." "Vane will be there," Elias warned, his voice edged with desperation. "It's where he'd orchestrate something this grand. It will be heavily guarded. Chronos tech, you won't be able to sneak in." "I know," Mia said, her voice hardening. She wasn't planning on sneaking. Her enhanced senses, previously a burden, were now her only navigation system through the spreading night. The city's echo, Vane's planned collapse, vibrated in her mind like a dark drumbeat, but underneath it, impossibly faint, was the dissonant hum of something else, something unplanned. The slivers, they were chaos, uncertainty, the points where Vane's precision might break, and they called to her from the direction of the meridian. Around her, the planned chaos accelerated. A towering digital billboard flickered wildly, then died, plunging the street into deeper shadow. The rhythmic whine of automated security drones patrolling the upper levels ceased abruptly. The symphony of failure intensified, the distant roar of overloaded generators exploding, the shriek of metal as a suspended walkway buckled under the strain. This wasn't just a blackout. It was a systemic dismantling, precisely as Vane had shown her in the terrifying echo. He was tearing down the city's operating system, preparing to reboot it according to his design. But her echo hearing found anchors in the chaos. The terrified heartbeats of people trapped, the frustrated shouts of emergency responders whose tech was failing, the unexpected detour of a single, manual-driven ambulance navigating side streets. These were the human elements, the unpredictable variables Vane needed asterisk her asterisk to help manage. And it was these asterisk human elements, amplified by the crisis, that resonated with the faint slivers she perceived converging on the meridian. It was a desperate hope, a possibility that wasn't about preventing the damage, but about preventing Vane's asterisk control over the aftermath. The meridian loomed ahead, a needle-like spire of dark glass and polished steel piercing the collapsing sky. It was usually alive with light and transport conduits converging like veins. Tonight, it stood mostly dark, a few emergency lights casting an eerie glow on its lowest levels. It felt like the silent eye of the storm, the source of the malevolent thrum that was tearing Ethelberg apart. She reached the periphery of the Meridian complex. Chrono's security, sleek and unnervingly calm despite the city's collapse around them, formed a perimeter. Energy fields shimmered faintly at key access points. Mia didn't slow down. The echoes inside her were peaking now, the cold, calculated resonance of Chrono's technology overlaid with the wild, untamed vibrations of the city's death rattle. And within that, the fragile, hopeful hum of the slivers, beckoning her closer. Mia sprinted past disabled security bots, their programming overridden by Vane's larger system collapse, and vaulted a low-energy fence that sputtered as she passed, feeling the resonance shift around her. Chrono's operatives moved with chilling efficiency, unaffected by the citywide breakdown, their comms and tech clearly running on an independent network. One saw her, raising a stun rifle. Mia didn't dodge. She focused her echo hearing not on the guard, but on the slivers calling from inside the tower. They pulsed with raw possibility, a chaotic energy that felt utterly alien to Chronos' sterile precision. She pushed her awareness into that chaotic hum, feeling it surge through her. The guard fired. The stun beam hit the air where she had been milliseconds before. Mia was already moving, her perception temporarily unbound by the conventional timeline, her body reacting to the echo of where the guard asterisk would aim. She surged forward, moving like a ghost through the tightening net of security, exploiting temporal microanomalies only she could perceive, moments where Vane's controlled collapse briefly faltered, creating blind spots in his network's awareness. It was exhausting, terrifying, and exhilarating. She reached the central access spire, bypassing conventional lifts, sensing a service conduit humming with contained temporal energy, likely Kronos' private transit line. It resonated strongly with the core echo, a direct line to the heart of Vane's operation. Ignoring warning lights flashing erratically, she forced her way into a maintenance hatch and dropped into the rapid ascent chamber, the temporal energy pulling at her like a physical force. The chamber shot upwards, the city shrinking below, visible through reinforced ports as a tableau of escalating disaster. Mia felt the air thicken, the resonance of the meridian amplifying. She was hurtling towards the center of the storm. She emerged into a vast, circular chamber at the meridian's peak. The air hummed with controlled power. Holographic displays shimmered in the center, showing real-time data streams mapping the city's system collapse, power grids failing, transport networks seizing, communications silent. It was a horrific, intricate dance of destruction, and Sila's Vane stood among the displays, a conductor leading his terrible orchestra. Vane turned as she entered, his face illuminated by the cold light of the holograms. He didn't look surprised. He looked pleased. Mia. As predicted, he said, his voice calm, devoid of the city's panic. I confess I wasn't entirely certain you would find the courage or the ingenuity to navigate my little disruption. But here you are. Behind him, Kaito Tanaka stood by a complex console, his expression unreadable, monitoring the unfolding events on smaller screens. Chrono's security operatives, a dozen strong, flanked the chamber, their weapons trained on Mia. You're destroying it, Mia said, her voice raw with exertion and fury. Millions of lives, lives that exist in an inefficient, chaotic system, Vane replied, gesturing around the chamber. Look at this data, Mia. This isn't destruction, it's a controlled reset. We are purging the inefficiencies, clearing the slate. We will rebuild Ethelberg, not based on unpredictable human whims, but on optimized temporal flow. A truly resilient city. You call this resilient? Mia swept a hand towards the holographic map showing swaths of the city plunging into darkness. This is tyranny, imposing your will on everyone, taking away their chance to choose their own path to adapt. Adaptation is messy, Mia. My way is clean, efficient. And you, with your unique ability to perceive the human element, the slivers, as you call them, are invaluable to ensuring the asterisk cleanliness of the transition. Join me. We can minimize the damage, guide the populace through the necessary pain. He extended a hand, his smile benevolent, utterly chilling. The city is falling. There is no stopping the collapse now, only managing it. Aegis failed. Your own improvised methods, while insightful, can't undo this on a city-wide scale. Chronos is the only path forward. The meridian is the heart of the new reality. Be a part of its creation. Mia felt the truth of his words, the sheer scale of the collapse he had orchestrated. It wasn't just a triggered event, it felt like a temporal cascade designed to be irreversible by conventional means. Aegis couldn't stop it. She couldn't stop it by simply rerouting traffic or sending an alert. But the slivers, she felt, weren't about asterisk stopping asterisk the collapse. They were about disrupting asterisk Vane's control over it. They were moments of pure, unadulterated temporal noise, vulnerabilities in Vane's perfectly tuned system, moments where the raw, unpredictable echo field of the city was fighting back against his imposition of order. You're wrong, Vane, Mia said, planting her feet firmly on the ground. It's not just about managing the damage. It's about who gets to decide what comes next. And it's not you. She closed her eyes for a second, focusing her echo hearing to an agonizing degree. The meridian chamber hummed with Kronos' controlled temporal energy, a tight, resonant frequency. Vane's control system broadcast this frequency, guiding the city's collapse like a precisely timed pulse. But intertwined with it, weak but persistent, were the slivers bursts of chaotic, unshaped echo energy from the dying city below. They felt like static against Vane's signal, points of temporal friction. Mia opened her eyes. You built this system for control, Vane. But you need human unpredictability to manage the fallout, and that's your weakness. She focused her intent, drawing on the raw, unfiltered echo field she had learned to perceive, the chaotic symphony that had first overwhelmed her in the grand nexus. It was wild, untamed energy, the temporal resonance of millions of lives, millions of possible futures colliding. Vane filtered this out, contained it, saw it as noise. But Mia saw it as the city's true pulse, its messy, beautiful, free will. "Stop her," Vane barked, sensing a shift in her demeanor, a dangerous focus. The Chronos security detail moved forward, but Mia didn't reach for a weapon or try to run. She extended her hands, not towards Vane, but towards the shimmering displays, towards the very air humming with Vane's controlled temporal frequency. She reached for the slivers. Drawing that chaotic energy into herself was like drinking from a fire hose. It burned, it roared, it threatened to tear her consciousness apart. The chamber's lights flickered violently. The Chronos operatives hesitated, disoriented by the sudden surge of temporal dissonance. "What is she doing?" Vane demanded, his calm cracking. Kaito, watching Mia with intensity, spoke for the first time. "She's amplifying the ambient echo field, injecting chaotic resonance into your control frequency." Mia gritted her teeth, pushing past the pain. She wasn't trying to stop the collapse. She was trying to make it unpredictable. To break Vane's perfect, controlled cascade and replace it with messy, human-scale chaos. To ensure that whatever happened next, the city faced it on its own terms. Sela's Vane lunged towards a console, likely to override her or shut down the system. The security guards recovered, raising their weapons again. This was it. The physical danger, the philosophical clash, the decisive action. Then, Kaito Tanaka moved. He didn't attack Mia. He didn't attack Vane. With a swift, decisive motion, Kaito slammed his hand down on a different console, one Mia hadn't seen before, tucked away near his station. A burst of energy flared, not the controlled hum of Chronos, but a violent, disruptive spike. "You wanted predictability, Vane?" Kaito's voice was cold, sharp. "You won't get it, not from me." The chamber lights died completely. Emergency red splashed the room. The perfect holographic displays mapping the city's collapse dissolved into a storm of static and fractured images. The humming of Vane's system sputtered, then died. Mia felt the pressure within her snap. The surge of chaotic echo energy she had drawn burst outwards, amplified by Kaito's disruption. It wasn't a controlled signal. It was pure, unfiltered temporal noise, flooding Vane's carefully constructed network, tearing through his planned frequencies. "Tanaka!" "You fool," Vane roared, lost in the sudden darkness and chaos. Chronos security, their systems suddenly blind, fired wildly. Mia ducked, rolling behind a console, feeling the crackle of misplaced energy fire nearby. The air filled with the smells of ozone and burning circuits. The roar of the system collapsing was deafening, not the controlled descent Vane had planned, but a violent, unpredictable implosion of temporal energy. Mia shielded her eyes as sparks flew from consoles and displays shattered. The Meridian, designed as the pinnacle of Vane's control, was becoming a vortex of the very chaos he sought to eliminate. When the worst of the surge subsided, the chamber was plunged into semi-darkness, lit only by emergency lights and the distant, broken glow of the city below. Mia pushed herself up, bruised but intact. Sela's Vane lay near his command console, not dead, but stunned, perhaps physically or temporally incapacitated by the backlash of his disrupted system. His face, visible in the dim light, was a mask of shock and disbelief. His perfect plan had shattered. Kaito Tanaka stood by the console he had activated, looking out at the city. He turned to Mia, his face grim. "I couldn't let him do it, not like this. He wasn't just destroying the city, he was destroying possibility." His allegiance was clear. Not to Aegis, not truly, but against Vane's absolute control. He had chosen chaos over predetermined order, aligning his action with Mia's disruption. Mia went to the panoramic window. Below, the city was not uniformly dark as Vane's echo had shown. Pockets of light persisted, areas where the cascade had been disrupted, where systems had failed unpredictably rather than cleanly cut. The rhythmic, predictable failure she had seen was replaced by a jagged, uncertain pattern. The screams from below hadn't stopped, but they were different now, mixed with shouts, calls for help, the sounds of people reacting, adapting, trying to survive. It was still a disaster, immense and terrifying. But it was their disaster now, not Vane's controlled demolition. The slivers had become tangible reality, points of unpredictable human response rippling through the planned collapse. She hadn't saved the city from the fall, but she had saved its agency. She had prevented Vane from seizing total control, forcing Ethelberg to face the consequences of its reality, messy and uncertain as it was, on its own terms. Vane was neutralized, his rigid empire of predictable futures shattered. The immediate temporal cascade was averted, the crisis at the meridian contained. Yet the city didn't sigh in relief, it choked on chaos. Darkness fell across Ethelberg, punctuated by distant sirens and the eerie silence where clockwork order had once hummed, replaced now by a cacophony of uncertainty. Mia stood amidst the metaphorical ruins, feeling the tremors in her bones, the echoes she'd once feared now thrumming through her like a wild, untamed symphony of unbound possibility. The future, once a single, fixed line under Vane's control, had exploded into infinite, terrifying permutations. The predictable world she knew, the life she lived, felt impossibly distant now, casualties of the choice made high above the city. The immediate threat was gone, but the true, daunting task of navigating this fractured, uncertain reality, of facing the fallout and finding her place within a world irrevocably changed by the echoes and the choices made this night, had only just begun. Resonant futures, the silence after the storm, was heavy with the weight of infinite, terrifying permutations. Now, from a vantage point overlooking the city, Mia saw that the darkness Vane intended was instead a fractured mosaic of chaos and fleeting light. Emergency beacons blinked erratically across unpredictable blackouts, a visual echo of the temporal disruption she'd amplified. The wild, untamed symphony of unbound possibility thrummed beneath her feet, a constant reminder that Ethelberg's future was no longer a fixed line, but a daunting, resonant uncertainty, unfolded across the panorama of Ethelberg. Mia wasn't at the Meridian's pinnacle any longer, but on a less prominent rooftop miles away, a place she used to watch sunrises from back when her biggest worry was a missed deadline. The air here was crisp, carrying the distant wail of sirens, the rhythmic thrum of emergency vehicles, and the low, persistent hum of power generators kicking in across unpredictable grids. It wasn't the silent, absolute darkness Vane had planned. Instead, blocks flickered back to life while others remained stubbornly dark. A chaotic, messy patchwork that spoke of disrupted order rather than imposed control. News helis, their searchlights cutting through the pre-dawn gloom, circled above key infrastructure points, the Grand Nexus, major data centers, substations like Gamma Prime, still recovering from its near miss. Reporters on the ground, visible on giant, flickering screens on the sides of surviving buildings, struggled to make sense of the unprecedented, spatially inconsistent failures. Chaos, asterisk she thought, not as a threat now, but as a state of being. Not predictable, not controllable. Not Vane's inevitability. A low, secure frequency buzzed in the comm unit Elias had given her. She tapped it on. "Mia, are you safe?" Elias Thorne's voice, strained but steady, came through the static. "I'm fine, Elias. I got clear of the Meridian. Kaito helped." A brief pause. "We monitored the final resonance spike. Unconventional, violent, but effective. The core cascade was fractured, not completed. He couldn't reassert control." "Vane?" Mia asked, her voice low. "Incapacitated, apprehended by emergency services at the site. Confusion is high. No one knows what truly happened up there, but he's off the board. The Chronos network at the Meridian imploded with his system. Their primary TRT capabilities are offline, likely destroyed or scrambled beyond immediate use. Chronos is, reeling, severely weakened. Their remaining cells will scatter, operate in the shadows, but their overt threat, their planned reset. It's neutralized." A wave of exhaustion washed over Mia, so profound it made her knees weak. Vane was gone, his vision of controlled destiny shattered. "And Aegis?" she asked. "Stretched thin," Elias admitted. "The citywide thrum nearly broke us. Our systems were designed for targeted intervention, not this kind of systemic chaos. But we're stable, redirecting resources now to manage the fallout, guide what little stability we can. Your action. It wasn't what we planned, Mia. It was risky, unpredictable. But by amplifying the very human chaos Vane sought to eliminate, you made his system unstable. You didn't stop the fall entirely, but you prevented its asterisk completion asterisk. You saved the city's agency. Agency. The word resonated, clean and sharp, against the backdrop of the fractured city. Not saving lives per se asterisk in that final moment, but saving the capacity for those lives, those individuals, to choose, to adapt, to rebuild on their own terms. Kaido, she pressed. We saw his signature on the final pulse, Elias said, a note of surprise still in his voice. A definitive break from Vane. We don't know his current status. He made his choice. Mia looked out at the damaged city. Kaido, the man who showed her Kronos' cold calculations, who built Vane's tools, had chosen unpredictability at the last moment. It was a reminder that even within the most rigid systems, the human element, the capacity for change, could assert itself. The echoes are still here, Mia said, feeling the familiar hum beneath the ground, the low thrum of potential futures layering the damaged present. They always will be, Elias confirmed. The temporal field is inherent to the city's complexity, but their nature has changed. The rigid, optimized echoes Vane was trying to impose are gone. What's left is wilder, less predictable, more open. A resonant future, Mia. Nothing is certain now. And for me, she asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. Her old life felt a million miles away, a pause from Elias. You perceived the path when we couldn't, you acted when our methods failed. You are a unique element, Mia, more than just an echo hearer. Vane knew it, we know it. Aegis is not built for open conflict or the kind of resonance you command. Your path going forward, it will be your own. But you aren't alone in understanding this new reality. It was a quiet acknowledgement, not a directive. Aegis would continue its work, but Mia had stepped beyond its structure. She had become an agent of chaos in the service of choice. Scene brought Mia back to her walk-up apartment in Brooklyn. The power was out here too, the hallway dark and silent. She climbed the stairs by the dim light of her phone, the familiar scent of old wood and dust suddenly feeling alien. Inside, the apartment was just as she'd left it, books piled high, research notes scattered across her small desk, her laptop screen dark. It was a snapshot of a life that no longer fit. She moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching objects that felt like relics. Her press badge, lying next to a crumpled printout of a city council agenda. A half-finished article about transit efficiency. The ordinary concerns of her old life felt impossibly small, fragile. Journalism. The drive to uncover truth, to expose what was hidden. She had uncovered a truth beyond anyone's wildest dreams, exposed a hidden world operating beneath the city's surface. But it wasn't a truth she could ever publish in the Ethelberg Chronicle. How could she write about the temporal field, about manufactured chaos, about the man who tried to control destiny from a skyscraper? Her work was done, but her career was over. She started gathering things, not systematically, but intuitively. Not clothes or possessions, but tools of her new existence. The comm unit from Elias, the small, now useless Kronos data crystal from Vane, a dark memento, a plain notebook and pen, a sturdy backpack, essentials. Leaving behind everything else felt less like loss and more like shedding a skin that had become too tight. The decision gnawed at her. Chloe, her best friend. Chloe, who thought the Nexus incident was just a weird panic ripple, who worried about Mia's deadlines and her rent and whether she was eating enough. How could she explain? How could she possibly bridge the chasm that now separated their realities? Her phone buzzed, an emergency network signal flickering into life. A message from Chloe. Mia, are you okay? Power's out everywhere here, it's insane. Saw the news. Is it bad downtown? Call me when you can. Mia stared at the message. Call her. Tell her what? That the man who nearly collapsed the city is apprehended. That she was the one who stopped him, not by traditional means, but by harnessing unseen temporal forces. That her life, as she knew it was ending, she couldn't. Not fully. Not ever. The hidden world demanded its own kind of secrecy, its own kind of sacrifice. She considered calling anyway, weaving some partial truth, some vague explanation about being caught up in the chaos, about needing to leave the city for a while for safety. But the lie felt heavy, inadequate, and the truth was impossible. With a heavy heart, she typed a brief reply, I'm okay, caught up in things, have to leave for a bit, not sure when I'll be back. stay safe. It was brutally brief, dismissive. It would hurt Chloe, leave her confused, maybe angry. But it was better, Mia rationalized, than dragging her into a world she couldn't see, couldn't understand, and couldn't possibly navigate safely. It was a severance, clean and painful, a final casualty of the temporal war. She placed the phone face down on the desk, next to the defunct press badge. The distance between them was now infinite. Her life as Mia Chen, journalist, friend, occupant of this dusty Brooklyn walk-up, was over. Days later, Mia sat on a bench in a quiet, elevated park overlooking a different section of Ethelberg. Below, the city was still recovering. Construction cranes dotted the skyline where buildings had fallen, temporary power lines snaked along streets, and the rhythm of life was stuttering, restarting. The chaos was less immediate, settling into a long, arduous process of repair and adaptation. The echoes were still there, a low, constant vibration beneath the surface hum of generators and traffic, but they didn't terrify her anymore. She felt them, not as overwhelming tsunamis, but as a gentle, intricate tapestry of potential. She could sense the fragile possibility of a small business reopening in a damaged block, the hesitant hope resonating from families reuniting, the quiet resilience of repair crews. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. The echoes shifted, showing fleeting glimpses, a new transit line subtly rerouted, a building design incorporating temporal field dampeners, people looking up, their eyes just a touch sharper, maybe sensing the city's pulse more keenly than before. Sela's vein had seen the city as a machine to be optimized, its people variables to be controlled. Aegis saw it as a delicate ecosystem to be nudged away from disaster. Mia saw it now differently. She saw the asterisk potential in the chaos she had amplified, the inherent, wild creativity of millions of individual choices reacting, adapting, forging unknown paths. The future wasn't a single track, not even a set of probable tracks. It was a constantly shifting, infinitely complex field of resonance, and its beauty lay in its unpredictability, its freedom. Her gift wasn't about predicting or controlling. It was about asterisk perceiving. Perceiving the subtle currents of possibility, the moments where human agency pushed back against imposed order, the slivers of chance that could change everything. She wasn't a journalist chasing external truths anymore. She was a guardian of internal potential, an observer of the city's resonant soul. Where she fit in this new reality, she wasn't entirely sure. Maybe she would find others like her, those who understood the untamed echoes. Maybe she would simply live within the city, a silent witness, using her perception not to prevent specific futures, but to ensure the possibility of any asterisk future remained vibrant and free. She opened her eyes and looked out at Ethelberg. The damaged city, the fractured mosaic, was a testament to the choices made in the dark heart of chaos. Her choices, it wouldn't be easy. The echoes would always be there, a reminder of the layers of reality, the constant presence of countless potential futures. The world was still uncertain, still dangerous. But it was asterisk, not controlled, not dictated, but open, resonant. A soft smile touched her lips. She stood up from the bench, the city spread out before her, humming with infinite possibility. Her journey wasn't over, it had just shifted perspective. She had found her place, not in hiding from the echoes, but in living within their beautiful, terrifying uncertainty. The future wasn't written. It was resonating, waiting to be lived.